water here. I've forgotten now. Is this one of your tunes, or is this just
This is one of mine.
It's a Matty B original, man.
This is the
It's a
original.
fucking bop.
But you did not conduct the greatest song of all time, "Walking with Ducks," if I remember correctly. That
I
was
did
just
not.
the
Nope. Walking with ducks. No, it's feeding the ducks is not
Feeding
mine.
the ducks. Feeding the ducks.
Unfortunately, I don't
That's
have
I knew I was
a.
going to
was
get
over
wrong
my
when you
head.
said it.
Yeah, I don't have an ear for lo-fi. I struggle with that stuff. I tried to do a couple of lo-fi covers, and I don't know, just not my.
Don't come to you.
No, just
You're
too
even
slow.
an enjoyer of lo-fi stuff, right? Weren't
Mhm.
you a fan?
I like
You just
some
can't
lo-fi.
produce it yourself.
No, I struggle to make it.
You have too
I'm very
much
good at it.
nervous, manic, feminine energy.
Yeah,
It's
probably.
moving too fast. You gotta slow it down, brother.
Yeah, probably.
Bring it down a
Pop
bit.
some lean,
All right.
some promethazine.
This is a good place to start because we're talking about exactly this, about taking a breath, taking a moment to step back and maybe think about what we really want out of government efficiency. And kind of specifically where I started here was just the complete opposition to DOGE that we've seen from the left over the last couple of weeks as Elon's been ramping it up. And I'm kind of curious how much of this is like the classic Trump derangement syndrome still seeping through. Like maybe we didn't really break the fever. I know we probably celebrated that too early a couple months ago. And sort of the focus I wanted to start with today was like, what should the left be cheering on instead of wholesale opposing when it comes to DOGE? Like there's got to be some parts of government that the left somewhere would be able to look at and say, yes, I think that's a bad way to spend taxpayer money, especially considering that we're going trillions of dollars more into debt every single year. And maybe we could slow the train tracks down a little bit.
I've got a few. Do you want to start though?
Yeah, I actually have a place I would like to start because I think there are two interesting points that come out of this. And I wanted to start with a hilarious headline that I saw on one of the left-leaning sites. I was trying to dig for anything positive on the left
Orange
about
man
DOGE.
bad.
It was difficult to find much. I had to come up with a lot of my own ideas of how to apply DOGE to the left-wing ideas to get them out because there's nobody writing articles about it on the left, seemingly. Outside of Christian Peretti, to be fair, he had an article about the FBI specifically and going after them. But I saw a headline that said DOGE, as I move my cursor so I can read it, DOGE proves elections have consequences. And I thought this was especially hilarious because, like, isn't that the whole fucking point of an election? If they didn't have consequences, then don't we not live in a democracy any longer?
Yeah, that's one of I think that's one of those phrases that a lot of people like to throw out. That's like, yeah, duh. It's very obvious. Like, of course, elections have consequences. And I know that when people say it, they try to, it's like, well, you get what you voted for, and this is what you get, you magtards and all you red hats. Like, look at what you've done. You know, they say it in it's kind of maybe not derogatory way, but derisive to a degree where there's, yeah, of course they have consequences. Look what you did.
Yeah, consequences definitely being in the negative context there, where they're trying to kind of accuse you of like, look at what you did, which is also kind of funny when we're this close to it and like none of this money's really dried up or stopped arriving. Maybe it's just now the faucet's cut off, but we haven't seen any of the real long-term effects to any of this getting cut. So it's interesting to see the slants already and them kind of getting ahead of themselves. And I guess the place I really wanted to start today was, I'm sure you guys have seen the viral White House list of the initial DOGE cuts of the things like advocating DEI and the DEI musical in Hawaii or in Ireland, rather, the transgender opera in Colombia, all of these things. And the reason I wanted to bring it up is because I thought it was really interesting to watch the spin dynamic on both sides and kind of the propaganda that runs through, and specifically going through like Snopes. So where this came from is kind of me asking people, you know, what would be like the thing you would like to cut as a left-leaning individual in our political system? What would you think DOGE could cut the fat on that would be a positive aspect? And I've run into a lot of like dumbfounded, mouth open kind of like, well, I was just kind of prepared to tell you everything that Trump has done is bad and wrong. And down to the point of even, especially this particular list, because it made the rounds on the internet so quickly. Snopes has gotten a hold of it and done their thing about how everything is false and And anytime you bring one of these up, they're like, well, it's misleading, or it's not exactly what you said, or it came a lot of them from the State Department, which is kind of the apparatus that's suspected to absorb a lot of the USAID shutdown stuff that is deemed necessary kind of at the next level, which would be kind of my great concern, is that they're going to cut all these programs and then just turn them over to a new department and continue spending all this money anyway, which time will tell. We'll see where that goes. But I kind of wanted to go through this list and just kind of show you guys the examples of like what Snopes had to say about them, and just kind of my knee-jerk reaction. I guess you guys can listen to the Snopes like turn downs and see how y'all feel about it as well. So the first one on the list was 1.5 million to advocate diversity, equity, and inclusion in Serbia's workplace. So when you get on there, it'll kind of say like, well, you know, this is not really exactly what happened. Like, yes, there's a lot of U.S. taxpayer dollars that went to helping out Serbian diversity hires, but it's a little bit. So it's kind of and that's just a small example of like the little bit of twist is always like, well, sure, it went to diversity hires, but they also like paid some salaries with it. So it wasn't just diversity hires. So you get like the Snopes false on there, which is always fun.
I wonder if they hired any Kosovans or if it was just only Serbians.
They're not Serbians. All right.
Oh, not that diverse, all right.
For sure. They are no more Serbians than than Bosnians are, as far as they're concerned. Real quick, are these one-time expenses or are these recurring annual? So is it like once upon
they are
a
one-time
time?
expenses.
Okay,
it was
so it's
just
like so
it's kind of a list
time,
of the most ridiculous things.
Did
right.
This.
These aren't even necessarily
Okay.
things they've cut. These are already expenditures that happened, but they were just throwing them up there on the government site.
But one time they spent this. Okay, gotcha.
Right. And this is whitehouse.gov, by the way, if anybody's wondering. This is literally the government telling you these ridiculous things. I mean, kind of Elon Musk telling you about them, but through the governmental website, and is not contested. So that's an interesting one. And that was probably the least egregious of the Snopes fighting against it, because it was kind of like, well, this isn't the full context. The next one's the $70,000 for DEI musical in Ireland. And it's one of these where like, well, this is false. And then if you go down to the paragraph under, it's false because it was paid out by the State Department rather than USAID.
Oh, gotcha. Well, but
kind
you
of
know what? $70,000 for diversity musical in Ireland sounds like a pretty good deal to me. I mean, you tried doing it for less than 100 these days, so.
This kind of begs the question. You guys have probably heard this song before. It was like on Instagram for a little bit and Reels. It's like this Irish kids band, and I'm gonna do an impression. It's awful, but it's like, you can stop what we do. Oh, there it is, and it just keeps going, and like it's got this like hypey beat. And I was like looking into the group behind it because I was kind of curious, like, why are a bunch of fifth graders in Ireland making like internationally acclaimed music? And apparently they were part of a charity, and they just picked like orphans and like kids who were just kind of like living in like a, not a great life. And they're like, I know, let's have them make a song. It'll be popular, it'll be cool, it'll be fun. So they got like a group of Irish kids, and then they got a group of like migrants to do like one of the verses each. And it was just kind of a shock. I didn't realize that entire song had been like astroturfed by like a government charity, apparently. This was like a weird thing to do with kids as well, who were just like, struggling a little bit. Because I don't know if those kids made any money from it.
They probably didn't.
But that music was trending as like a real background and on TikTok for a little bit.
Oh, that's interesting.
Just complete mind blown. It made me wonder.
I imagine those kids were fine. I can't really think of any examples of us catastrophically fucking up child musicians or actors in any cases. So I'm sure they're treating them great,
100%.
I
Being
think
handled by adults like that is what they really need.
It's good for them. I think we should bring back was it Jonathan Swift's A Modest Proposal? I liked his solution much better to the poors of Ireland. We'll just eat them, instead of like trying to make them into this, pop sensation to bring aware, if they're poor, let's just eat them. There's hungry people all over the place. I like that much better than we'll make a band with them. Stupid.
Hey, you feed a kid, you fed them for one day, you teach them how to play an instrument, and they can get molested until they're 18 years old in the music industry. So
they can be a starving artist their whole life.
Or they can feed 10 kids each for a day.
For a day. All right, so the next one, we're going to start getting into the fun ones now. $2.5 million for electric vehicles in Vietnam. So when you pull Snopes up again, big false, red X right on the front of it. You scroll down half a paragraph and you can read, this is false because it wasn't all electric vehicles. It also offered rewards for innovations, new products, business models, and financial models as part of an effort to bring green energy to the country that is becoming one of the fastest growing per capita greenhouse gas emitters.
False. I gotta love Snopes for just like coming out swinging heavy. He's like, they're not gonna read this.
Right? No,
They ain't
wrong,
scrolling down.
wrong, false. It's and I guess my guess is that the list of these as you go down are going to be all of these qualifiers that try to take away from the fact that, well, okay, even though that the very simple list or the very simple synopsis doesn't cover everything, the fact of the matter is taxpayers were at threat of violence in a cage, sent how many millions of dollars for electric vehicle initiatives in Vietnam. And this is why everybody hates fact checkers. This is why people hate the media. This is why nobody trusts anything that they say now. Because instead of saying like context, like true, but here's some context, it's just like, nope, it's wrong. Nope, there's no war. There's no war in Ba Sing Se.
Go for it.
I was just gonna say it's interesting too because all of them are like, well, you shouldn't even be outraged by this because it was used for all of these other things. Which, like, first of all, like all of the rewards are for essentially you just described electric vehicles. So you can say it wasn't for electric vehicles, but it's for paying for electric vehicles and giving award money out to people who invent new electric vehicles and business models that work around electric vehicles or other green industries. Secondly, why the fuck do I want to spend any of my tax money in another country for their greenhouse emissions, their roads, or whatever? It's like, this is already a ridiculous expenditure somewhere halfway across the world. And on the hopes of like, hey, this place in the middle of the jungle, we're hoping we're going to get enough electrical outlets and Teslas there that they'll stop being greenhouse emitters in the next couple of years. It's like, it's so many steps away from them being green neutral. Even if you do agree with that agenda, that there's nothing that's going to come out of this.
Also, I want cheap t-shirts. So, like I want to consume. So I need there to be these poor places to displace American jobs and have factories that don't have the standards of American, businesses and factories. Like I want cheap things. And so this is all bullshit.
Yeah, you're going to make things very expensive. That's why cars are unaffordable in this country right now. Is mostly Clash for Clunkers, where we sold every car that was as old as I am, so that nobody can buy them in an older car without it is a little bit impoverished. And then eco standards when it comes to engine emissions. Like, we almost cannot produce small trucks in this country anymore because the price in order to produce them with the engineering that has to go into that engine is so ridiculous that it's like, well, let's just make giant trucks.
I have a friend that just got a new Tacoma, and the price tag on that thing was $55,000.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, sorry. $55,000 for a brand new Tacoma, which to me it blows my mind. I mean, I have an older Tacoma, but when I bought mine in late 2016, it was like $21,000, and there's not that many upgrades. But you know what I mean? It's hard to justify a $30,000 price increase between my truck to that truck. Now, granted, that truck's nicer than mine, but still, it's not $30,000 nicer.
Yeah, and it's supposed to be like the entry-level truck for Toyota too. Like the Tundra is supposed to be their like really nice truck. Where like if it was $60K, I'd be like, okay, I guess that sounds reasonable for a Tundra. But even that's probably not reasonable for a Tundra. But just It's how far I've been butt fucked into like looking at car prices. But like the Tacoma at 55. That's just, it's nutty, man. Absolutely nutty. I remember in high school, there were people who were driving not new Tacomas, but like 5-6-year-old Tacomas in high school because it was like what they could afford. Now, never. Yeah, I understand why like kids aren't getting driver's licenses anymore.
Shoot, I think my first two vehicles were combined less than $3,000, and both of them were completely functional vehicles. Like, they were old, but they were fine. Probably around 100,000 miles on them. Like, we're not in terrible shape.
My first car was only $5,000, but at the same time, it was like 7 years old. It wasn't even like an old car. It was just like, it was relatively cheap. Now, like, that doesn't exist anymore. You want like a 7-year-old car with 100,000 miles on it? That's at least $22,000. It's impossible for like a kid in high school to ever like have that kind of money.
Yeah, some 16-year-old kid whose dad's not pitching in for that birthday present.
You can't do
screwed,
it,
man.
It's crazy because my Tacoma, every now and then I check just to see what it's worth. Mine has like 180 something thousand miles on it, and as far as Tacomas are, it's just getting broken in. You know, I mean, I'm gonna get 500,000 miles out of that truck. I'm determined, but it is with all of the wear and tear. It's a 2016. I want to say it is still worth, like, if I was to go to Carvana or something, it's worth $18,000 or $19,000.
That's retarded.
It makes no sense.
It makes sense why all the kids are only Ubering everywhere. Why they're not living life. People are talking about like the Gen Alpha kids not getting driver's licenses. There's nothing out there for them to get. Like, there's no cheap freedom.
That is nutty. I'm not even like in Austin proper.
Right.
I'm like outside in the suburbs, and it's wild how many of these kids are like, I'm probably just going to wait to college to start thinking about driving. Like, they're 18-year-old seniors in high school and have not even attempted to learn how to drive a car yet. It's not the majority, but it's enough that you're like, that's odd that you're not even trying.
It's like,
but some of that might be that calculation. They're like, dude, I'm 6 years away from buying a car.
Holy shit.
Yeah, I mean, if you get on Craigslist and look at like just used cars that are like reasonable, there's almost nothing that like anyone who's young would say like, oh, this is within reach. Sometimes you'll find like an old Roller, which is a car with like no motor, and they're like, oh, the body is straight. It's only $7,000. I'm like, what the fuck?
Yeah, I bought my first 2 cars for less than that. I didn't have to do any engine work.
It's crazy.
It's absolutely wild. It's even worse when you like ask old boomers and even like old Gen Xers like what their first car was like, and they're like, well, I only had $128 to my name, so I took half of that and I got myself a truck. And like, oh.
I got myself one of those older Corvette models so I can bust around in.
It was
sure the ladies looked at me weird because it was 5 years old, but you can make up with it with a little charisma.
And it's funny we've gotten here too, because there was a time maybe 8-9 years ago where you'd have the same conversation, but it was about boomers and houses. And now 10 years later, it's about Gen X and cars. Like, the economy has shifted really far.
These are the things too that you hear, and they're like, well, regulations actually save money for the average. You're like, do they really? Because I can't buy a fucking car right now. And most kids are definitely not buying houses.
Holy shit. So I just went to Craigslist.
What'd you find?
So I did.
Hey, wait! Before you do that, where did you search? Because I know
I went to Albuquerque.
Okay, cool.
Connections. Oh.
Yeah, yes. I saw her or him in the stereo aisle. You
were at the dealership. Look. You saw the price tag on the car and you threw up in the parking lot.
You look so good while you puked, looking for your name. Would like to hold your hair while you throw up next time. All right, so this is a 2008 GMC Sierra, and I went to condition just fair, not good, just fair, which is one above salvage in terms of what Craigslist has. 2008 GMC Sierra, 300,000 miles on it. Guess the price.
$8,000.
Logan?
Ooh, I'm gonna price it right here. I'm gonna go $8,001.
What a bitch.
10.5.
10.5?
10.5.
Isn't that insane? For something that is gonna be broken down the first month you drive it.
That wasn't a good year for GM either. That was an awful year for GM trucks. Like,
that's crazy.
In my experience with the one GM that I owned, most mechanics when they see the car come in, go, you buy a GMC and they suck. So I'm a little bit dubious to all the years GMC's been producing cars myself.
Sucks for you,
my
brother.
personal anecdotal evidence.
Yeah, actually, my neighbors, they were telling me, because they last time they came up here, they had a new truck, and they were telling me that the engine on those, whatever the bigger is, like the 6.3 or the 6.7 liter engine, they have problems with, they're just kind of shutting off, and there's about to be a huge recall. And so they said that they passed the semi going down the highway back to Texas at like 85 miles an hour, and all of a sudden, boom, the whole truck shut off. And it's like, fortunately, there was enough distance between us and the semi we just passed, and I could pull off over the side of the road. But he's like, if it would have happened 20 seconds earlier, we would have, got rear-ended, killed on the highway, and that was it because of this faulty engine. And the dealer offered them, because he had like the 60,000 bumper to bumper, and he had 55,000 miles on it. So they offered to replace the engine, but it was only going to be covered for an additional 5,000 miles.
Yeah, that feels like he knows something about that engine. I don't know about that engine.
Fucking engine again.
Right, exactly.
Right. Yeah, that makes you go, it feels like the warranty's the better deal, because you seem to think this thing's going to shit out before then. I don't know if I like this.
It's crazy, but I was just scrolling through though. The older diesel engines, before they started adding all the DEF regulations and those emission things, there was a 2000 Dodge that had 370,000 miles that was listed for $16,000.
16?
$16,000.
Okay, well,
2000 Dodge.
Did you look at the pictures? Was it like, did it look like someone taking care of it?
It was, I mean, it looks like a 2000 Dodge.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's it looks
That's
like it's seen some work, some wear and tear.
The one thing we do have to consider is like, that's almost collector car age. Once a car hits 25 years, you qualify for collector plates. So like half of me is thinking like, maybe this is a collector car now and people just like that Dodge. But if it looks normal, then like
they like it's the engine. I know just enough about diesels that was, those were good engines, as they say.
See, that's
kind of. We used to always think that out in the middle of the country, when you saw a guy driving a Dodge, he was always like, guy's not really country, because Dodge had great engines, but the bodies just fall apart when you start throwing stuff in the bed really heavily. Yeah, we used to trash guys who wore a cowboy hat and drove a Dodge. We were like, all right, city boy over here.
As I had like a Ford Ranger.
Yeah, I was driving a teal green Chevy Suburban at the time, but that's beside the point.
It was nice to make fun of other people. It never stopped us.
All right, Kiefer, do you have something else you want to say before I get back to my list here? I feel like we cut you off.
No, we can hop on. Nothing too important.
Okay, so this next one was the $47,000 for a transgender opera in Colombia. Again, this is one of the State Department grants. So again, it's false because USAID didn't directly pay for it. But again, it's like, I mean, the end result is that $47,000 went to put an opera on about transgender living in Colombia.
Which is like a still, as far as I'm concerned, you try doing that for less than $100,000 these days. So
you are doing it in Colombia. That makes it a little cheaper.
Sell tickets? Weren't they making money? I mean, I'm sure they were getting encore requests. They probably could have done a circuit for at least 4 months and turned out $300,000 in ticket revenue alone. Why did they need the grants?
Keep pumping it out.
It's the upstart cost. That's all. And I'm sure there was an IOU. Like, I promise we'll pay this back when we hit the big time with this opera. We'll pay you guys back.
Oh, well, snap. I can't believe they didn't make their money back.
The people of Colombia just were not that thirsty for a transgender opera show, apparently. Oddly
not
enough.
Progressive enough.
All that machismo down there.
Well, we just got to keep cracking at it. Eventually, we'll break through, man. Just one more transgender opera.
Any day now. The best part is you don't have to hire but half as many actors because they can just do both parts, male and female.
There you go. Now you're thinking.
Talk about efficiency today, baby.
You're onto something.
This might have been my favorite one. This was also a State Department one, so that's fair enough. It wasn't USAID as they proposed on the government site. $32,000 for a transgender comic book in Peru. And the fun part about this Snopes one was it says, false. And then you scroll down and it says, the main character was not trans. They were gay. You're like, okay. How much does that change that, tax money went to a comic book in Peru?
Well, I hear kids love gay people, so it's probably a real hit down there. I got to imagine.
As the Latins do, all of their gendered language, the way they speak has gender in it.
How much was it for the comic book?
$32,000, and it was part of they kind of did that fun thing too, where they were like, "This is false. It wasn't for the comic book. It was for a program that was for American foreign relationship cultivation that just happened to make this comic book." Okay, so it paid for the comic book because the bill item didn't say for a transgender comic book. You're calling it false, but it's the money still goes there.
Logan, I think you're being very short-sighted with this. Think of the soft power that we are buying, right? Think of it's like we have hard power in the United States. Well, it could be, but it's like think of the military. That's hard power. This is efficient use of soft power, right? Because now we get to influence and persuade people to our way of life without even having to invade them. I mean, you were so short-sighted here, man. I'm a little disappointed in you.
Yeah, and it's hard to think of all the influence that we're going to give up that we've cultivated from pressing LGBTQ propaganda onto Latin America, who's ostensibly and large not interested in hearing any of that.
I do wonder how much they pocketed, because I'm imagining the comic book maybe cost like $5,000 to get in the print and distribute. So is that like a cool $30,000 in the pocket? That's not a bad swindle.
A very interesting point that I forgot to bring up with a lot of these too is a lot of them also will propose they're false because, hey, it says 2.5 million, but that organization only received 350 of that, 1,000 of that.
Oh,
and it's kind of one of those like, I don't think that's the point you think it is.
So they're channeling their inner Zelensky is what they're doing.
Yeah.
Oh, we didn't even get half of the age you guys gave us.
170 billion is missing. You guys need to say more.
It's like we need more because it's like you guys are wrong time, wrong audience at this point.
Right. Know the room a little bit when you're we're already having arguments on should we send another penny over there. Don't tell us that you lost 60% of the money. Well, it's all been getting embezzled by these horrible entities, oligarchs. Like, yeah, it seems like a good reason not to send more money. All right, there's a couple more I'm going to skip past here that are kind of the small fries to get to some of the more juicy ones.
Give us some real outrage. I want to be angry.
One of the big ones they put on there was hundreds of thousands of dollars to nonprofits linked to designated terrorist organizations. Again, this was a false one, according to Snopes. And it was false on the grounds that the allegations of links to Pakistani terrorism groups have not been proven to this point.
Oh, wonderful.
Which is really fun because they picked one of the alleged terrorist groups that Buddy was getting funneled to. And so we haven't proven that yet. And two, that's the one that I'm always pointing to. That was the gender studies money to Pakistan and that big omnibus bill that sent billions to Ukraine and Israel. And on this podcast, we speculated on that, how that sounded much more like coup money to us than gender studies money.
Yeah.
So I thought that was quite fun there.
I'm actually shocked that the number is that low. You said hundreds of thousands. I expected that to be in the tens of millions.
Yeah, perhaps this one was specifically to one group.
Oh, to that one organization.
I wonder if that's. I did not denote if that's that one organization. So that was a lapse in my research there to be specific enough. But
how could you?
Yeah. My other favorite part of that is, we don't have any proof it went to these terrorist groups. And my first thought is do you think that terrorist groups are printing receipts out when they get money from our government? Or do you think that kind of happens in an underhanded way that we don't know about?
God, I can't believe we didn't leave proof behind when we were laundering money to terrorist organizations. What a shot.
This is great. Like, that's on us. Like, it's so short-sighted.
I forgot to get the receipt. I guess I can't write that one off.
Man, they left the memo line blank again. I guess we have no idea where this is going.
Dude.
Which, again, in and of itself, seems like a pretty good reason to stop sending money all over the place when we can't even account for where it's going. Just oops. Oops, the terrorists got it again. Dang it.
Yeah. Oops.
Yes, it's been very weird hearing the lack of accounting practices practiced by our own treasury. Like they couldn't even audit anything just because no one had ever like tagged it to any sort of like cost center or spending code. So it's just like, oh yeah, we spent 800 million to, oh, we don't know where. We don't have a name for it. It's like you guys didn't even mark it down. It's the weirdest thing ever because like you can't even do that at a publicly traded company because the SEC is like, this isn't proper accounting practices. You're not following GAAP. But the treasury can do it? Like, what the fuck? It's like, come on, guys. You guys can't tell us we can't do this if you can't. If you can. Doesn't make any sense.
Well, you're overlooking because the treasury can always just print the money they're missing. It's not really that big of a deal.
It would be nice to be able to do that. Yeah. I wonder, there's been a lot of like on Smirkanish and Dan Abrams, and they've been talking a lot about this. And Smirkanish has even been very pointed to people to where he's saying, is there anything that Elon Musk could do or find that would change your mind? And some people are just adamantly, no, it doesn't matter. I want government to keep wasting money because Orange Man and that autist bad, and they cross their arms. And it blows my mind that there's so many people just entrenched in this thought of, no, I want the federal government to just keep wasting money. I don't want them to save me a single penny. I want to keep paying my taxes. I want the IRS to be bloated. I want the FBI to not be able to pass or that's the Pentagon. I want all of these things. I want $47,000 for transgender comic books in Peru, as they scream. And it blows my mind that they're actually vocal opponents to, like, you don't want to like try to save anything. Like, you don't want to dig whatsoever. Okay, cool. I'm glad to know that you just literally like government good or government bad now that Donald Trump there. Good with Biden.
Even farther than that, they are digging in, but they're digging in kind of in the biased way of like only looking to refute every single thing that is done. I mean, down to the point where like, I love that question's exactly the question I encourage anybody to ask. Is just like when somebody's saying this is all terrible, it's all, but just go, what is the one thing as a left-leaning individual that you would cut from the government that you think would make it more efficient? And if you're met with just an open mouth stare, then it's like, okay, you're not critically thinking of this. I've had it all the way down to like the shrimp on the treadmill example. They're like, well, that was crucial in the research to us getting Ozempic, which you're like, is Ozempic even good or especially necessary for us as a society? That we have a new weight loss drug that's also seems to have some adverse health effects that are terrifying.
There's going to be some gnarly in about 5 years. We're going to start seeing a wave of those class action lawsuits. Did you take Ozempic between the years 2021 and 2024? You are entitled to compensation, as like you have to carry around your colostrum.
Did you rapidly lose weight to the point that you lost all of your bone density?
Right, dude. It's so, and the fact that like
I forgot about that,
or the fact that people were just like, oh, here's this wonder drug. It's like, yeah, I'm sure this will, because I'm sure that, thalidomide had no adverse consequences on those kids' little limbs when they popped out. And I'm sure the Ozempic will be just fine. Go ahead. I'm sure that nothing bad will ever happen.
I did say, to Ozempic's credit, you can tell that stuff works because Hollywood's using it. Like if you're getting the actresses on it, then that shit's for real. As far as
well, they used to do speed and smoke cigarettes and have like a pea for dinner. So, I guess
that was healthier.
That was healthier.
Good for the heart. Get that blood pumping. Get your circulatory system engaged.
4 out of 5 doctors recommend Camel cigarettes.
The 5th one's retarded.
That is the one lesson from history that people don't seem to want to learn. It's, in like the 1940s, you could find like an entire research wing of a hospital that was telling us that lobotomies were good, safe, and effective. At any period in time, you'll find research that's supporting things that we know are important now. And people never think about like what we're doing right now and what's acceptable right now that might just be like looked at in the future. Because like, where did Ozempic even come from? Wasn't it like some sort of weird enzyme from some sort of like poisonous crab? It was something like that. And they managed to like synthesize it down to the point where like the poison wasn't affecting us. But like, it's still like not exactly the safest thing in the world if you really think about it. And
yeah, right. Where it's not affecting you. You're going to lose a shit ton of weight and you're going to have some kidney failure, but it doesn't affect you. Don't worry about it.
Who even knows what the spleen does anyways? Do you guys know?
You can take it out and live, so who cares? And
I think it was a Kurt Metzger joke about kind of in the ilk of like what we're doing right now that we'll find to be outrageous. Where he's like, you guys remember the food pyramid that they told us? Like, we should have known that was fake. The whole bottom of the food pyramid's pasta. Like, that's pretty staunchly like, oh yeah. We all know not to eat white bread mostly now. That's not that good.
I, for one, support the food pyramid as it was because I fucking love pasta. All right. So back up.
Nothing's better than garlic bread. They should have put garlic bread at the bottom of the food pyramid specifically.
It is the entire bottom is just garlic bread.
A crust. Just a nice pizza dough.
Also, I just looked it up just for people to know. Ozempic came from Gila monster lizard venom.
Oh,
that's where it came from. Like, it's not good for us in its normal state.
Isn't that the like? If I remember
yellow and
that's
black
the one
lizard.
where they like run them down, they bite them, and then it paralyzes the animal down the road, right?
Yeah,
you might be thinking of a Komodo dragon, but I think they hunt pretty similarly.
Okay, gotcha.
No, the Gila monster. I'm pretty sure its venom paralyzes people. I have to like do a bit more research. Well, let's see what it does.
I think Komodo dragons actually, I think they're still like having a scientific argument on if they're venomous or not, because I think their venom is not produced in the traditional sense of like a venom gland, but rather their mouths are so filled with bacteria that they just like infect you when they bite you.
Oh, interesting.
Yep.
It's like not
That's
truly
how
venom.
works.
It's just you're sick now.
It's just so much
dirty.
bacteria is in their mouth that you get
your blood's
the
gross
worst
now.
infection of your life.
Ozempic is synthesized from the fucking lizard dog poison.
Yeah,
What?
it's literally lizard poison.
Bro, that's wild. I had no idea.
I thought it was
to
when
be
you said
fair,
crab, it sounded bad. I think it's worse now that it's a lizard. I'm not as good about it.
The Gila monster is like the grossest lizard ever. Like their pictures are all awful. It's not photogenic at all.
Just slobbering all over themselves.
I wonder how many of those things, like if we started going through just things that aren't like not outrageous, that's not the right word, but like it's not Ozempic, but it's things that you and I might have or use kind of semi-regularly. I wonder if we could figure out where a lot of that stuff came from, how blown away and disgusted we would be.
I think
here's a pretty good one for you. I know one off the top of my head. Any vanilla extract that is not made with pure vanilla, do you guys know where that comes from?
Oof.
It's probably a nasty gland.
Yeah.
You're correct.
Ooh,
is it beaver glands?
It is the anal gland of a beaver. That was a fact that changed my purchasing immediately. I decided from that day forward, it looks like I'm going to spend the extra couple bucks and get pure vanilla.
I feel like I knew that somewhere. Oh my god. Beaver, you're just like it's like, and I think of like my dogs when they scoot across the carpet, like somebody's out there just like fucking popping beaver glands and
well, I mean, we're southern boys from places that don't have water, but everybody up north will tell you there's nothing as sweet as beaver ass.
Boy, you ain't eating ass, so you've eaten beaver ass.
And, maybe there's a bit of beauty in taking the present less seriously and treating this like we're all still kind of like a bit of a backwater. Because before people really knew what like radioactive like decay was and how it affected us. You could just buy radium and it was like a space heater. It's like, oh, it's a heater. It's better than coal. It's better than wood. It'll heat up your food right away. And they made like little like cooking tops, and the top was just always hot because they had like radium rocks under there, and like the radiation was just heating it. People were like heating their homes with it. People were using it for all sorts of nonsense. And it was like 40, 50 years later when they made the bomb out of it, and they were like, oh damn, maybe we shouldn't have this in the house. Like
let me just check real quick and make sure the stove's on.
Marie die? Because she's kind of like the first one. But I know that there was so much radioactivity in her desk that her papers are still radioactive to this day.
Yep. 1934. Like, we were just fucking around for
just playing with hot rocks.
Yeah. And if you read some of the ads for like radioactive heaters and whatnot, like even the ad people were like, we don't know how it works. It could be magic. Who knows? But it's cheaper than wood. It's cheaper than coal. And it's more reliable than both.
We've been bouncing around a lot of theories on why this rock heats up that pan, and we're kind of landed on the love of our God and Savior Jesus Christ.
Pay no attention to your stage 3 leukemia. And then
we think everybody with our stoves getting cancer because they're eating too fast at the efficiency of which it cooks.
Dude, I was listening to this podcast today called Fiasco, and it was talking about the AIDS epidemic. And one of the things that blew my mind the most about it was the resistance of the people it was affecting the most, where it's like 1982, 1983, and they're like, all right, we're getting a handle. Like, we think it's a bloodborne virus. We know it affects these communities specifically. And it was in San Francisco. They had these things called like the bathhouses, where where all the gay guys would just go and have as much promiscuous sex as they wanted to. And there were doctors, some of the doctors that were treating people in the 80s were talking to people like with full-blown like in AIDS, like, you are going to die. It's like, what are you gonna do tonight? They're like, oh, I'm gonna go to the bathhouse. And they're like, bro, like, you gotta stop. And they tried, but people in the gay community resisted, even though like they know that it's like, this is not good for us and we are probably going to get AIDS. They resisted it because
doctor said it's a bloodborne virus. I didn't say nothing about poop.
Dude, it was some of the things, like when the doctor was talking about how he asked one guy how he is avoiding the virus, and goes, oh, I just change the sheets after I have sex. And you're like, oh, that's wonderful. And the resistance of the gay community they fought against shutting them down, because they're like, well, if they take away the bathhouses, like, we're going to the camps next. And it's like, no, all we're asking you to do is just not butt fuck each other all the time. Like, slow down. There's something that's literally killing you guys. And there was the same resistance from the plasma industry, where the first couple of people, some hemophiliacs, contracted AIDS because they had figured out how to like synthesize this new clotting treatment for hemophiliacs. And one of the guys who was pushing it went to a meeting and said, what's the threshold? Like, how many hemophiliacs need to get AIDS before you guys are actually going to take this seriously? Is it 50? Is it 100? Is it 1,000? Because last time I checked, 5 people in the last year getting AIDS from these transfusions is not good. And
yeah, they say transfusions seem like a bunch of homos to me.
But it was just like, I guess the point I'm trying to make is the resistance from people that know it's not good, that continue on in whatever realm. And it's the same as like DOGE, right? Like, you can't touch my government because I want to be taxed to death and have super inefficient. Like, you can't touch my bathhouse, even though it's going to kill 45% of the gay population of San Francisco in the next 5 years. Like, but my freedom, but my government. And it's crazy. The
but
resistance.
My unprotected anal.
Right.
I kind of understand it, let's pretend there's something in life that you love and you love it to death. It's your favorite thing to do ever. And someone tells you you're going to have to stop doing your favorite thing or it's going to kill you. What value does life have when your favorite thing
What
is
if
gone?
I just did my favorite thing on Friday night?
Yeah, like, I mean, it's really tough to accept that like something you've loved forever is going to come to an end, and maybe it's already come to an end in the past and you didn't know it. Like maybe your last day at the bathhouse was 8 days ago, and you were ready to go tonight. You're cleaned up, you've done your little enema, your butt is sparkling, and you're having to come to grips with the fact that you may never get to go again. And your last time might have been not the best time. It might have just been an okay time. I understand not giving up your life.
Those things, okay, that's a fair argument, but it's not like so there's a spectrum, right? You have people that are saying like we have to abolish the bathhouse, and the public health commissioner at the time was just saying like, or you know what you guys could use, like you could use condoms. Like I'm not saying that you don't have to go to the bathhouse. I'm just saying like when you go to the bathhouse, just put a condom on. You know what I mean? So I think there's reasonable compromises.
Doctor, I'm not that worried about getting pregnant.
But look, maybe not using a condom is your favorite thing. You know, like.
Oh, you know what?
A reasonable compromise could be spiritual death.
Okay, that's totally fair. And if you were willing to die that horrific, painful death to enjoy, then so be it. You know what I mean? There's free will, more power to you. Have fun dying of a horrible degenerative disease. Like if having unprotected gay sex means that much to you, or reusing needles, well then by all means. Like I'm not here to stop you. I just think that
someone joined the chat like right now, and it's like just tuned in. I wonder what they're talking about. And it's like, look, man, if having gay sex is just that important to you, I'm not stopping you. They're like,
sure,
I'm going to talk about the usual, having the usual conversation.
Right.
I wonder. This popped in my head. So there's a lot of talk online about the trans movement kind of leading to twink death in the gay community. That too many of what would have been great gay twinks. You're a twink.
No, he's not,
bro.
No, it's like a small, hairy gay man. Like a feminine gay man, kind of almost a femboy type.
Twink death is a term that's used to talk about like someone who's famous or popular when they all of a sudden aren't super dry. Like Zac Efron's a good example. He was like young, kind of muscular, clean shaven, and then supposedly got in a car crash, and now his jaw is gigantic, and I don't know what the deal is, but he doesn't look like
the car crashed right into his plastic surgeon's office.
It's something fucked up there, but he doesn't look like his young version anymore.
Okay. I'm also, to be fair, I'm misusing twink death. You are correct. As you said that, I recall that is actually what it means. I was referring to the gay community has raised a little bit of accusation towards the trans community for getting to their twinks before they hit maturity and transitioning them.
It's like stop stealing our femboys.
That's supposed to used to. It was like big gay men, I think, were harder to find, like the bears. But now some of the talk online that I've seen is about the twinks being the hardest to find. But I wonder if that was the second twink death, because like in the height of 1980s AIDS epidemic, how many guys were at the club and they're like, that guy's pretty cute, but it's a little bit skinny.
Well, depending on the year, it did not stop anybody. You know what I mean? There was, it's worth checking out if you have some time to listen to it, because there are things that just blows my mind. And sure, I understand you're
more of a visual loner.
I get it. You know what I mean? If you care that much about it, and it's, to be fair, right? It's like if you were a closeted person and finally have like a place that you feel like you could be you, and now all of a sudden they're going to try to take that away, I could see a resistance. But I mean, like, how many of your friends do you need to die, like watch die these horrible, painful deaths before like maybe a condom's not a bad thing, you know?
There's another
there's
tangent.
People who love alcohol, and they're running into huge just drawbacks from consistent alcoholism into their like late 30s, early 40s. They're not going to stop because like it feels like death to stop. Like life is empty without it, even though they know it's killing them. And I feel like this is kind of like in the same vein. Yeah. If you found something you really enjoy and you really are just vibing with, how do you stop? And I think too, that's one of those things that no one ever tells like young people or kids in general, just that like there's a lot of things that feel great. Some of them feel too good. And you end up on that like pathway where you're just never going to be able to stop yourself if you've gone too far. And that's like the real danger of like drugs. It's the real danger of alcohol. It's the real danger of like any sort of like dangerous like sex or like anything that's like
That's fair.
a little frowned upon. It's just the danger of feeling too good. It's never
That
really
whole like slippery
Yeah, fair
slope,
enough.
like you can fall into it too much, was exactly what my dad told me when I asked him what gay was. It was don't get started, son.
It's like no son of mine will be a ballerina.
Yeah, gay sex is a gateway drug to gay kissing. You know, you don't know how far you
You never know when it's gonna stop. And then,
I don't know
and
about
before
that.
you
I've
know it,
never
you're
kissed
gonna own
one yet.
an Airbnb in Cuba. You know, it's all downhill after that, dude.
Oh. Okay, I got 3 more on my list before I can prompt my questions that I was leading up to this. So the next one was the millions of dollars to EcoHealth Alliance, which was involved in the research at the Wuhan lab. Now, this one got another false rating, and it was because, again, it lacks context because the money actually went to UC Davis out in California, and then they took that money and paid the Wuhan lab. So it wasn't exactly, you know, which is one of those, like, I guess it's fair enough that like that was a decision of the college and not of the government on some level. But again,
Maybe.
it's just another one of these, like, we shelled out tax money that went directly to what more than likely, they also threw that in at the end of the Snopes. It's like, we haven't yet confirmed that the virus came from this lab. And it's like, yeah, all right. Well,
Sure.
Most people are leaning into that theory pretty hard these days. I don't know if you guys have noticed.
That's was this the patient zero funding, or is this a different
I don't recall
funding?
reading that, so maybe it wasn't.
Yeah, well,
Yeah,
there
it
was
might
like
be
the
different.
funding
The
for
patient zero funding was through NIH.
oh, okay, gotcha.
Yeah, this is a different bit of money that went to the same lab.
Oh, okay, copy.
But again, like, yeah, how much of our taxpayer money and different amalgamations went to forming the virus that stole the election from the rightful president? Okay, these last 2 are the real fun ones. So hundreds of thousands of meals that were meant for Syrian civilians that went to Al-Qaeda affiliated fighters in Syria. Now, this one was,
How can you tell the difference?
This one wasn't exactly false. It's highly misleading because the U.S. investigators, including the USAID Inspector General, charged the man who diverted this $9 million to Syrian rebels.
Huh.
So,
what did they charge him with?
Kind of like, sorry.
Huh.
I don't. It's probably not in the article, but like, what did they charge him with, and where did they charge him?
You know, it wasn't in there. He did get 12 counts charged against him of something or other. I can't recall what now.
I just
wonder if love the like this isn't actually true because the guy who embezzled all that money did get in trouble. So you're like, that's still $9 million that went to feeding Al Qaeda. Like, that's pretty wild. However, it got there.
I wonder if it was I wonder if when that money was spent for the mills, if it was intended for a good purpose, and then somebody's just like, well, we have all the guns, so your mills are now our mills, you know, and then and all of a sudden you get like some poor guy who's charged with embezzling when he's just like, look, dude, like they showed up, they said they'll either like I can either give them the shipment full of food, or they're gonna like cut my wife's head off in front of me and rape my daughter. So I gave them the food, and now you're just like, no, you're being charged with embezzlement by the United States government.
Right? Why didn't you say no to the AK-47?
No means no.
To be fair to our good government on this one, I do believe this gentleman got a fair amount of that kickback as well. So I think this was a money-making scheme.
Fair enough.
Guns at the end of the table sort of thing. And the last one was the hundreds of millions of dollars to fund irrigation canals, farming equipment, and even fertilizer used to support unprecedented poppy cultivation and heroin production in Afghanistan that ended up benefiting the Taliban.
There it
That's
is.
right.
I was waiting for
one.
one of these. I was waiting for something that's truly outrageous. Not to say that the other ones aren't outrageous, because they are, but I mean, when we start getting into the hundreds of millions of dollars to then, you know, because the Taliban had successfully eradicated the poppy trade before the invasion in 2001. And then we come back and be like, actually, we'd like you guys to start growing those again. And here's some U.S. soldiers and British commandos to help guard them.
Yeah, it is funny because, you know, when we did invade, there were 2 things we guarded. 1, the oil fields. It kind of makes sense. 2, the poppy fields.
Interesting.
Gets
Yeah,
the
and even when
noggin
even
jockey.
during our exit efforts, those were the last assets that we left.
Right? Because what even was in Helmand province besides like poppy fields? It was just like a rural mountainous province where all they grew was poppies. There was no reason for us to be up there whatsoever.
There was hundreds of billions of reasons. Okay.
Yeah, that's another, and
To
I
be in
didn't
there,
even know
sir.
hundreds of billions of reasons. See, I
I'm just
didn't
naive
even really
American.
catch that bit of context, but that's really interesting too, because good news, Snopes is going to let you know this is false as well.
Oh, perfect.
Because one, we never intended to benefit the poppy growers.
Oh, that's good.
Which is my favorite one. Okay.
Oh, it was just to farmers, right?
And also the Taliban banned the poppy fields, so obviously they didn't really care about poppy production anymore. But I like the veil of like, we were doing this to help them build farming infrastructure in an area that really isn't good for growing anything but poppy.
They actually can grow wheat up there pretty well. They swapped over like almost instantly.
Nobody's trying to smoke wheat, all right?
You can grow marijuana up there really good too.
Yeah, you most definitely
We can talk about that.
But Taliban was all about the wheat. Apparently, they wanted to grow food crops or something like that instead of
What
cash
to like
crops.
feed themselves? Whoa, that's crazy. That's very not free market of you, bro. It'd be a shame if we had to invade and give you some more free market.
If only they understood like the humanitarian benefits of growing opium.
Dude, it's like how am I supposed to get like half of West Virginia addicted to pills if you're not growing opium, sir? Like
we're just trying to import a little bit of American culture over here.
Dude, so selfish. Those farmers are so fucking selfish. It's like, bro, dude, we have people that are addicted that need their fix over here, and you're gonna deny them? You're going to deny them God-given right to.
China's been freaking us out with their fentanyl lately.
Crush their.
We gotta raise the GDP of Afghanistan, and the only way to do that is get rid of all the wheat farms. It's time to grow some fucking opium.
Nice opium. So that's another fun kind of aspect of this. Like, well, we didn't mean to help out the opium farmers. We just bought all the equipment, the fertilizer, dug the irrigation ditch, and then set the stage perfectly for there to be a black market for opium. And also probably were guarding all of those opium fields and farming assets while they were planting opium. If I was a betting man, like, you think they just left them out there and went, oh shit, they all planted opium? How did this happen?
Whoa, where'd this come from?
Even though most of the indications were that the government that was there before us that ultimately would have benefited from this, and the Taliban was like, well, they don't even like opium. That was another part I really liked, is like, what do you think the ability of the Taliban to change their ideas about profiting on opium fields were after 10 years of occupation by the United States? Like, are we thinking they still stood real strong on the like, well, we're not selling opium? Or do you think they were like, fuck it, we need more AKs to fight Americans? We don't care where it comes from.
I mean, it's funny though, because as soon as we left, like, it was one of the first things the Taliban banned, so they just didn't give a fuck, man. And also they had a weird form of taxation. They just charged like a 10% like transport tax. So if you wanted to like transport your opium or whatever you were growing out of the farms, they took 10%. And they were like strangely happy to drop down to like what's not considered a cash crop whatsoever, even though it cut into probably one of their only sources of funding after we like embargoed their banking system. So it's I don't mean to like toot their horn, but it was kind of impressive watching them just kind of be like, nope, we don't want the money. But like they didn't even
stand on our principles here.
That's what's up.
It was like
that's respectable to a degree.
They allowed the farmers one last harvest, and that was it. Because it was
explode themselves for their religion. So I kind of believe their conviction, to be fair.
It's
honestly one thing I'm really curious about, because like, okay, Vietnam, we had the whole Vietnam War and it seemed like a rough place, but now it's a great place to visit. They're fucking bros. They're some of the coolest people in the world. I feel like Afghanistan has the same potential to be bro central in like 15 years, 20 years, if we just kind of like leave them alone, let them chill out. Like, you guys have seen like the roller skating videos and whatnot. Like, they're just trying to bro out. They're trying to have fun, man. And every time I like read interviews from like ex-Taliban dudes, they seem cool as hell. And I just can't wait for it to be far enough in the past that like maybe our kids can go on a bachelor party to Afghanistan and like just have a great time and not be concerned or worried about crime or violence, and just have the Taliban looking out for them. I feel like it's possible. And
I just recently saw some TikToker who was a travel influencer that went to, I don't think it was Afghanistan, but somewhere the Taliban was occupying, and was just like getting shown around the country by the Taliban. They're like handing him AK-47s to take pictures. And then, like, to your point, they're just like total bros. They're like, "Oh, what's up, man? Yeah, well, we're out here fighting the evil empire. No big
Bitching
deal."
about their office jobs now.
That is a hilarious story that came out of all that.
Like, wait a minute, what? I have to.
My life used to mean something. I used to have a purpose.
I sit in this office all day. God damn it.
The faxer won't print because it's out of yellow ink, but I'm printing it black and white. Why won't it print? That's the easiest way to found some freedom fighters right there.
There were two things I kind of wanted to circle back on after the conversation with that crazy list. And the first thing I wanted to kind of bring up, which I guess we've already expounded on a bit, but just the interesting tricks that you see from Snopes, and like the dirty little trick where they kind of do the like, well, it's not exactly true because they used one word incorrectly, or half the money didn't get there, or it was actually this added into it and not just specifically that headline. And it's something that I feel like from doing this podcast and doing our own research, like you go to Snopes, but then you have to also read the paragraph under Snopes. And you just are constantly seeing these funky little semantical tricks to like tell you things are false when they're really damn close.
Could you do that? Let's say you had a job and somebody said like, hey, look, we know this isn't true per se, but we need it phrased in a way that's as accurate but also deceptive as possible. Could you do it?
Oh yeah, I could definitely be a White House press secretary.
Really?
I would. Yep, I would have no trouble getting in front of the American people and lying to them every single day.
That's kind of a shock. Interesting. Logan, what about you?
Yeah, I guess I'm going to shock you too. I don't feel like that would be an incredibly difficult job necessarily. I mean, if you give me a 12-hour prep time to sit there and think of my pitch, like, yeah, absolutely. I think I could be a tremendous liar. I think I've been a pretty good liar most of my life when I have the mind to be one.
That's interesting. I would have expected the exact opposite answer from both of y'all.
Are you considering a morality? Because that might be the part that I would have to wrestle with more. Because on a knee jerk of like capability, yes, absolutely, I think I could do it. But then when you're like, are you willing to lie for the government? Maybe that gives me more apprehension in my heart if I actually think that out.
Well, like let's say it's lying in a way that you believe is the best for everybody in terms of like final outcome. So like I'm sure that the writers of Snopes, they probably believe that like what they're writing needs to be interpreted that way. I'm sure you could find something where you could lie for everyone's like best outcome from your perspective. Could you do it?
Yeah.
I'm waffling now that I'm bringing in the morality of it. I might have to stand on my principles for that. It would take, and I'm sure there is a dollar amount where I would shut my fucking mouth and say it, but do whatever you want. But yeah, as far as just like having that job, I would probably have some hangups about it, to be fair.
Interesting. Yeah, I'm surprised to hear that Matt was just 100% in.
Dude, for sure. Like you get to be the mouthpiece to shape the administration's message and tell the peasants what they need to know. Absolutely, dude. I'm a firm, but like the peasants need to be corralled. They need to be. It's a necessary function of having 340 million of us, and so I don't
know if I know one other fascist libertarian, but you really.
I
thought I was the fascist libertarian, man.
I definitely waffle.
Okay, well then I have a follow-up question for both of you. Then, did either of you ever have like a sales job in the past, and if so, were you good at it?
I actually never have, despite every human being in my life telling me I should go into sales. But I never tested the theory.
I sold real estate for a couple of years and did really well. But I think that was more of a function of me just being in the right place and right time. I don't know if I was necessarily good at real estate.
To that point, I did know a lot of other people who sold real estate that were, what's the right way to put this?
Sleazy. Slimy.
No, not even
degenerate.
real estate people in real estate that knew you, who tried to do it here in Texas, who were very envious of the setup that you got in the mountains up there.
That's fair.
That were like, bullshit. He's not even as good as I am at this job, and he's making twice as much as I am.
Probably 3 times as much, if I had to be honest. I did really well for those couple of years.
Well, the 2010s was a decent time to be a real estate agent because you didn't really have to like talk people out of their own best interests. But like for instance, if you tried to sell someone a house maybe 2 years ago or a year and a half ago when interest rates were like 6%, 6.5%, 7%, and like the market was still topped out, prices hadn't come down, you really kind of had to like omit some things and like avoid telling people things to get them to buy things. And I had a sales job a long time ago when I was, in community college, actually. I worked at Target in the electronics and like toy section. And like our whole thing was like, they wanted us to sell add-ons.
That's code for sex toys.
Yeah, it is. You buy the dildo and I want you to buy the remote control so you can like use it in the other room. Every little add-on gets you like a little extra point with the store. And I was the worst salesman hands down. And it wasn't because I didn't know how everything worked. I absolutely did 100%. But I was kind of like, well, look, your kid's going to want some controllers with his PlayStation. This only comes with one as you have friends, right? And then I'd be like, you can buy these online for like $8 less, or you can buy them here if you guys don't want to deal with like online shipping. I know it's a hassle. Dude, I talk people out of like doing things all the time, just nonstop. I just couldn't help myself. And
yeah, I've gotten onto people in restaurants before. I call that downselling. It's where somebody goes like, "Did you want an order of fried pickles with that, sir?" And they're like, I guess it's probably too much food, but yeah, we'll get it. And they go, "We have a half size." Go, shut your fucking mouth, dude. You just hold a full size.
Yeah, no, that's 100% me. And I think that's like a nice little parallel with like Snopes, for instance, because like Snopes is doing a great job of like not telling people about the half size, and they're burying it as far as they can, changing definitions as they please, and there's nothing wrong with being a good salesman. Like, don't take this as like a moral judgment or anything, but I think there's a certain like character or personality that's required for it that I just don't have. And I think I'd be awful as like a White House press secretary for the same reason. Like, I can't help but get in my own way when it comes to talking to people about anything. I just want them to have like their own best interests, like maximized, even if it's like a negative for me.
You talked me out of it as I thought about it more. That's actually mostly why I've told people I don't go into sales, is because I don't feel comfortable just lying to people's face for money. And I know a lot of sales job, it kind of is that. You kind of have to
You're not lying
to make that money.
All right. We are twisting truths, okay?
Hey, we've all taken our little online priority tests, and I always come out as the biggest bleeding heart. I can't look at somebody in the face and take advantage of them.
Logan, these are not lies. These are alternative facts, all right?
I'm also
not selling lies.
During this
I'm
conversation
selling alternative
Matt
facts.
was telling the truth. He could lie to America.
Well, in that case, I would also say to Matt that you are not allowed to criticize Snopes. Stay away from Snopes.
Ooh.
All right.
Leave Snopes alone.
No way.
Leave Snopes alone, you dirty fascist.
All right. I can walk a line of hypocrisy quite well, sir. All right.
I guess that is kind of the beauty of fascism, is that you're always right, no matter what incongruency in your theology, because that's kind of the whole thing. It's just, no, I'm the ruler.
I am
my way.
What did Trump recently say? No one breaks the law when they save the country or whatever. It's yes. It's King Louis the 14th. I am the state.
Yeah, that's a greatest for your own good thing. It's for the greater good of society.
I love that they tweeted that. I love that the White House tweeted that as well. It was fucking fantastic.
It's and then all of
he
this
who saves his country breaks no law.
Dude, and then of course you have the freak out.
You say that right before you rubber stamp the January 6th releases.
It was right after. It was, and then you have the freak out of the other people in history that have said that. And you get a colorful list of people like Hitler and Mussolini to some varying degree, but I don't know. I I always attribute it to King Louis the 14th. It's like all of those guys are just like they're ripping off the sun god as far as I'm concerned. When he said it first, I am the state. It's like he won. It's like Hitler and Mussolini just like degrade the legacy of that statement.
Yeah, they did the whole Michael Scott thing where they were just like, whatever the Wayne Gretzky quote is, then Wayne Gretzky and then Michael Scott. It's just, you're putting Hitler on top of Louis XIV quote or whatever.
For sure.
Like,
and
come on, guys.
It's like, give him credit. And no one's ever said it better than him, to be fair. That is the best. He who saves his country breaks no law. No, it's just, I am the state. That's all you have to say.
Yeah,
I don't even have to save this thing, guys. If I fuck it up, it's still me.
It is kind of the definitional purpose of being the state. Like, what value is there of being the executive of a country or a polity if you don't have like utmost executive power? It seems almost weird that we have the discussion where people are like, oh, but the king can't do this, and it's like, what? What do you mean the king can't do this? What do you mean the president can't do this?
I am the king. I'm the
president. Doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
And it's kind of funny too, because there's the executive order that came out today where it was all like, it's illegal to work in the executive branch and not do what the executive says or whatever the order was. And there were a bunch of people saying things like, we'll just wait until this gets turned on us. And I was like, I don't care. Of course, when the other side wins an election, they should be like complete supreme power as far as the executive branch is concerned anyways. And it's weird. It's like people are getting in their own way right now because they're worried about some future that like may not even come to pass. And also is like, it should come to pass if that's how it happens. Like if the country votes in that way, then that's exactly what should happen. And it's weird seeing people like afraid to win in the moment because they're worried they're going to lose in the future. And it's like, just take the win now, please.
Yeah. I'm definitely one of those. I'm one of those. Exactly who you're talking about. For sure. I definitely end up in that one just because. I understand that there is the unitary executive theory that's really being put to the test right now, and to a degree, like Trump. Right. If you're the executive, you deserve to have the executive, the cabinet you want, the people in your position. The part I don't like about it is the fact that, and maybe this is like me, like now being a status cuck to a degree. It's like, but my separations of checks and balances, it's like, but maybe I want unelected bureaucrats. I can't have it both ways. You know what I mean? Like you can't have. There's no perfect solution to government. And maybe this is, what I mean? Maybe we just gotta, maybe it's gotta be a king with extra steps is maybe that's where we have to get to.
I'll also say that when, the framers were creating the Constitution and when the Federalist Papers were written, nobody ever in their right mind was saying like, well, we want the executive branch employees to be able to subvert the president.
Sure.
Like nobody was saying that when they were writing it down. And, our intention, of course, like executive branch employees, they're supposed to not be part of political parties. They're supposed to not vote, blah, 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 just because we want them to be as nonpartisan as possible when they're executing their job, which is to do something that someone who's been elected tells them to do.
Right.
But in practice, that's not what's happening. And I think one of the ways we actually get back to that is we just make it extremely painful for people to just not do what the executive tells you to do.
Yeah,
like either
that's totally fair.
Get out of the way, or
that's why it's here in the first place was all of the speed bumps that he hit during his first presidency, the lying to him about bringing troops back from the Middle East. I mean, it's yeah, he had a pretty strong incentive to figure out a way to make sure they're not going to do that again for a second term.
Yeah. And maybe to your point, this is just what needs to happen. And knowing full well that in the future, there will be a president that has that power and uses it in a way that I don't particularly like. But I think that that's probably better than an unelected class of bureaucrats subverting who is supposed to be in charge of them. If a Democrat down the road gets to do things that I'd rather have that power vested in them than a bunch of people that we're actually just going to lie to the Democratic president too about troop levels and yeah. Absolutely. To your point, you make a really good argument.
Good pussy. Put your foot on the gas.
Oh no, I was going to say too, just to argue the other side there. I do definitely understand like this acceleration of executive power and this annoying hand wringing that happens on the opposite side every time, where like as soon as Biden signs some executive orders, it's like, oh, can you believe how many executive orders he signed? Like, oh, look at all these people he's pardoning. Look at all these crazy things he's doing. And then when Trump gets in and does something just as heavy-handed, they're like, you fucking libtards. Like, you got what you deserve. It's like they're such a short-sighted, like, as soon as either side gets the power, they just completely forget that, you know, Donald Trump used all of that anti-domestic terrorist laws and executive orders to turn around and prosecute all the liberals in his second term. Not that he's done that yet, but is one that they're all definitely, that's all part of their conspiracy theory, is like, he's definitely coming after us. And it's like, yeah, but you guys gave him the ability to do so. So what are we really talking about here?
100%. And you know, there's always this weird like hand wringing too that you're talking about. Like I remember when what's his face in El Salvador, Bukele, when he first started going after like the gang members, there were people, I was still posting on Instagram at the time, and there were people who would like get in arguments with me, and they'd say things like, well, look, he's going after MS-13 first as like a trial run. Next, he's going to go after the gays. He's going to put us all in jail. You know, like we're not going after like the most armed group in the country so that we can go after your like your karaoke.
We have to make
club.
sure that our military specialists are capable of handling the gays when it comes to it. So we're going to start out with MS-13. Get a nice light warm-up lap in.
Absolutely, just a warm-up lap.
Scariest, most neck-tattooed men I've ever seen in my life.
Absolutely. We're going after everyone who's responsible for 98% of the murders, and then after that, we'll go after you.
then it's time for the gays.
Absolutely. And I only say that just to say that like people have these same like conspiracy theories here about like what's going to happen, like who's going to end up in camps. Like I'm sure if we were to search for like Donald Trump internment camps, there's probably a conspiracy theory on Twitter like right now about it. Like people are just never going to stop with the hand wringing. And I think that's
even one of the criticisms I keep running into when I'm like, well, isn't this a good thing with DOGE? And they're like, absolutely not, because, you know, anything that gets cut out by this guy's such a bad thing. And how could we possibly make it through without these super vital programs when there's no like introspective look on what does it really mean to you? Like you're just turning it to scream at these guys. And that's a lot of what like this 2025 Project 2025 talk is like, well, he's going to cut all these programs now, but he's not even going to save us any money because he's not really cutting them. He's going to come back in later and just put all these right-wing guys in there. And it's like, maybe, but right now he's cutting the budget, and I'm pretty cool with cutting the budget. I'm going to yell and scream and cry if he starts implementing new Republican-based unelected officials to run all the exact same programs and spend the same money. I'll be outraged with you. But in the meantime, something good's happening. Let's like take advantage of this small bit of victory that we have in the first rollback of any government I think I've seen in my entire lifetime.
Yeah, true. This is the first time in my life this has ever happened. Never anything close to this at all. And, you know, from the libertarian perspective, it's what we've all wanted. It's like we wanted the government to get smaller. And so it's also very weird watching that camp not be on board with what's happening. In some ways, it makes me feel like the Libertarian Party was like some form of controlled opposition in some way. You know, if you look at like the party is ran by funders for the most part, donators and donors, there's no like open like voting as like a party member. You can't show up in the primary and be like, actually, I want to see what's his face, Austin Peterson or McAfee, and instead we got Mr. like Gary Johnson. Just what is Aleppo? And I forgive him for that, but just,
Sleepy Gary.
You know, it felt like we were getting forced into positions we didn't want and kind of being caricatured almost as like a political party. And so watching them just kind of like, I don't know, almost fall in line with Democrats in like a lot of ways has just been kind of like, you guys weren't my friends this entire time. Someone just paid you to pretend to be my friend. That's kind of what it feels like, man. It's a very weird world to be in. Someone who like always tried to love the Libertarian Party with every election and was just constantly just beaten over the head at the last second. But I forgot what I was talking about, where we're going with this. So I apologize.
I'm glad you went down this route, because my last thought on the White House list there is a little bit of a conspiracy theory. It's conspiracy time, boys. Get your tinfoil hats out.
Joke's on you. Mine stays on.
Oh, by the way, did you guys run across the origin of the term tinfoil hat? It was kind of buzzing around social media this last week.
No.
So where tinfoil hat came from was, there was this guy who, and he was like a pretty intelligent guy. He was an entrepreneur of some kind, who was doing pretty well, owned a lot of patents for cameras, I think. And he was having some like depression issues. So he went to a psychiatrist. And unfortunately for him, that psychiatrist was an undercover CIA agent.
Oh, bummer.
And they started fucking around.
What the?
They put him under for something, maybe a false hypnosis, and implanted a chip into his brain, some sort of tracking device. And this guy was a reasonably intelligent guy, so he started thinking about radio signals and the way waves affect your head. And he started putting a tin trash can on his head. It was the only thing that made his headaches go away.
What?
So he started wearing a tinfoil hat because of a chip that was put in his brain by the CIA.
Dude, like,
is this a true story or just like a
true story?
Hold up, this is like.
Why was his psychiatrist an undercover CIA agent? Was it for him, or was it just like, oh, I'm just in
this is what we do? Like, we're just
there to run
ambushing
experiments,
people.
just
Like,
in case we get somebody interesting.
Dude, what? That is insane. First off, like, just the betrayal. Like, you go to your psychiatrist hoping to get like some real help, and it's just like, joke's on you, bitch. I'm actually CIA. We're gonna implant something in your head.
I hope I get a reasonable, unbiased psychiatrist. It's like, no, you got Dr. Frankenstein, actually.
We got another one, boys. When your
Still
girlfriend
uncool.
asks you to go to couples therapy, just know that she's a CIA plant.
Dude, that's so uncool.
That's a nice little tidbit. Next time somebody makes fun of you for having a conspiracy and says something about a tinfoil hat, you can go, well, you actually know the origins of that.
Bro. That is so fucked up.
It's interesting because it's the same way conspiracy theory got turned into a pejorative. Tinfoil hat got turned into a pejorative, but both of them started out a completely legitimate, like, concerns about the shady shit our government was doing.
I still have trouble believing it, man. It's just wild. Maybe it happened like in other countries, like the CIA was just operating, just fucking with people. But like, I'm trying to imagine someone being undercover as a psychiatrist for no real reason other than just to fuck with someone. And it makes sense overseas, like with what we did in the Philippines, but like,
dude, we got communism to fight. All right. No sacrifice is too small or too great when it comes to beating them dirty reds. All right. We've lost China. They're taking Vietnam. What's next? Australia? It's like we've got to start implanting chips in people's brains, posing as psychiatrists. All right. The Russians are going to win.
It's fair enough. The Philippines was funny too, because like we owned the territory, like we got it from Spain. It was ours.
We took it. Okay. Like,
we weren't really like, fighting anyone over it. There were some like communists there who were just like, it's the same thing in Afghanistan. They wanted to grow like food crops, and the CIA was like, no, we need you to grow tobacco and some cash crops so we can export. Like while like famines were going on, so the CIA just invented vampires and started killing people and like poking them in the neck so it would look like they got bit by vampires. Just so like the communists would be afraid to go into the rural areas. And it fucking worked too, but it was like, what?
Well, yeah, those godless communists will believe any stupid superstition, If you don't have a solid foundation like Christ to stand on, you'll believe it.
Dude, there's some pretty wild things. Like when the CIA started dropping, they packaged, what was it? They packaged extra large condoms and they labeled them medium. And then they started dropping it just so the Russians thought that all like Americans are just these big dick monsters on the other side of the Berlin Wall.
I think that was only proposed. I don't think they actually ever implemented that.
Oh, don't
plan,
ruin
but
that
still
for
very
me, dude.
funny.
I want to believe.
I want to think of like these Russians in Berlin looking over the wall and just like, it's like, oh my God, this is medium. Like,
I've
never felt so inadequate.
And see, if DOGE was uncovering this kind of spending, I'd be like, no, we can keep doing that.
It's for the good of the country.
The Kazakhstanis, all right?
I like the image of a war room of guys of like, how do we psychologically break our enemy? And one guy's like, do we convince them their dicks are small?
It works. You know what I mean?
They'll give up a fight.
Absolutely brilliant.
That's what you guys are missing without that corn syrup in your diet. It makes it grow thick.
You know, it also kind of makes me wonder about other things because, like, I've never been to Japan, and sometimes I order clothes online, and like, you get a shirt from Japan, and you're like, okay, I'm a medium here. Let me order a large there just in case. And it shows up, and you can't even get the thing around your neck. It's like choking you. It's like, there's no way Japanese people are this small.
There's if you look on the bottom of those sites, actually, there's like the double X, and then there's a little Godzilla icon that you can click there on the end if you're American.
Just select that one.
Gojira.
Wait, what? How do we get on this? What was?
Because I have a conspiracy theory for
okay,
you.
yeah,
I was
that's
about
right.
to start talking it. All right. So as I was going through all these Snope articles and kind of like forming my idea about like the crazy tricks that Snopes pulls, I got to thinking about, man, it's every single one on this list has got something like that where it's just barely wrong and Snopes jumps right at it to say it's false, which prompts me and probably anybody else who's skeptical of Snopes to scroll down and read it and go like, all right, I see what you did there. Like it's a little bit close to the chin there that you kind of skated by. So my conspiracy here would be, do you think that it is being intentionally done in this crude manner with the headlines by the Trump and Elon contingency as both pretty good internet trolls at this point in time in order to kind of set the trap for Snopes? That if they put transgender comic book and it's a gay comic book, they know Snopes is going to put false, throw it on their website. All the lefties are going to go out there and talk about how this is bullshit. And then when anybody goes to do any research on it, they see how fucking close it was and go like, oh, they really are out to fucking get this guy.
That is one way to boost engagement that people use on Twitter, where you'll intentionally misspell something just because you want people correcting you, because then the algorithm's like, oh, more people are commenting. We got to boost this up. So it could be kind of the same thing. And I wouldn't put it past the current administration to do something like that. That's kind of
especially right on the heels of Elon putting his heart out to everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And them having proven that they wore out the Nazi warning so bad that the ADL came and got his back on that one.
It is like the kind of thing Elon would do, knowing how the press operates. So, yeah, no, I wouldn't put it past him.
Makes sense. I buy it.
That's my fun conspiracy.
No, I think it's I sometimes struggle. I guess I used to struggle with it more than I am now. I've never been a big believer like Trump is a buffoon. He is not a rational actor. Like he is somebody that's clearly intelligent. And I used to downplay like, oh, well, he can't think that far ahead. There's no way that in that orange, in the orange skin of his under that swoop that, there could ever be, there's no 4D chess going on. And at this point, I'm starting to kind of give him his just chops. And it's probably more Elon knowing internet culture and Donald Trump kind of deferring to him. But it checks out. And also it makes you wonder too, are they just going to throw lawsuits at Snopes too? Because right now they've got all these lawsuits against CBS and other people. They kicked the AP out of the press corps because they refused to call it the Gulf of America, which to me, that's like I'm not down with that one. It's like, all right, like don't be so sensitive that somebody
kick him out.
Like, dude, come on. You don't want AP kicked out because they're not going to call it Gulf of America.
Yes, absolutely.
No, that's stupid, bro. That's so stupid.
We have to all get on board right now. This is why we don't have freedom fries right now.
Fair enough. I guess we can agree to disagree on the AP. But it's
the communist Gulf of Cuba.
But it's like, why won't the AP just do it? Like, why is this such an important thing for them where they're just like, no, we must protect the Gulf of Mexico? Like, why?
We're actually not having fun today like everybody else. So
They're that one person in the class. Like when you have the substitute teachers, like, was there any homework assigned? It's like, yeah, we're supposed to watch a movie. And it's like, actually, we're supposed to have a pop quiz on the
Yes,
quadratic
that
formula
kid.
today.
Absolutely.
The
And
hall monitor all grown up.
the more I've looked at this whole like Gulf of America thing, like in other countries, they rename features all the time. They rename places, they rename streets, they rename themselves. They have new names for the country. And like I'm trying to imagine like if I was going to be like, oh, I'm at a press conference in India, and they've renamed themselves Bharat now. That's what they call themselves because India is the British name that the British gave them. Whatever.
I'm trying to imagine your name.
I'm trying to imagine showing up to a press conference in India and refusing to call it Bharat. You know, it would just be like, dude, just call them that. You're in India, you're in Bharat, sorry, call them Bharat. And like, you know, if we want to make up a name for that like body of water down there, like nobody else has to call it Gulf of America. You go to Mexico, they're not calling it Gulf of America. And why should they? They don't have to. You know, but like you're showing up to the White House and you can't even just call it the name that the president says it's called. It's like, how much do you really care about your job if this is like the thing? You know, and I bet they called it a traditional Muslim sea burial when like Obama told them that. So all of a sudden, like this is the one name they're drawing a line at. I don't buy it.
This is fair enough. All right, point well made.
Look, I'm just a crypto fascist here. All right,
dude. The point well made. Fall in line. Yeah, fair enough. It's a new day. You either fall in line and you do business, or face the consequences. I mean, you can look at Eric Adams in New York. You know, it's like, oh no, we'll drop the charges without prejudice, though. So if you stop doing what we want you to, we'll just bring the charges right back. It's pretty blatant, and I think that's one of those things that should. I think in a different world, in a past America, that would be a huge scandal. But I think that in the America that we live in now, nobody cares. Everyone's looking at it's like, yep, like we're deporting people, we're winning, we're trying to broker pieces. Like, who cares about the Trump administration? You know, quid pro quoing a failed mayor of New York. That's not, you know, it's like he's not even going to win re-election anyway. So might as well dangle a carrot over him, even if it is blatant, so we can get some more illegals deported.
That's fair. And you know, I don't like Eric Adams, but it's one of those like interesting things. Like Democrats create a bunch of problems for themselves without like really knowing it. Like, you know, if you're going to push bogus charges against like a Democrat mayor, because like why were they even after him? I have no idea like what they didn't like about him.
I mean, you can make a pretty decent argument that when he started getting angry at the Biden administration's immigration policy, because the governors of Texas and Florida were shipping all those people up to New York and they got overwhelmed, and it was taking a real toll on the city. And so you can make a decent argument that when he stepped out of line in lockstep with the Democratic message, that's when the charges. And you know, it's one of those things is like he probably right, preponderance of the evidence, he probably violated the letter of the law in terms of like anti-don't, you know what I mean? But it's like, are we really that upset about a nicer flight and a nicer hotel suite so that the Turkish embassy got their building approved a little bit? So like are we supposed to be outraged about that when all of the other thing, right? It's like, it's not the fact that Nancy Pelosi is worth $200 million on her $230,000 salary. That's not, you know what I mean? Don't pay attention to that. It has nothing to do.
I think she got a lot of that from her OnlyFans, though.
Oh well,
she got some yonkers there.
Dude, remember what you're fighting for, brother. Dude, when you're in the trenches of Ukraine, think of Nancy Pelosi in her bathing suit on the beach. Remember what you're fighting for.
I'm pretty sure I've showed y'all that before, but have y'all seen the Nancy Pelosi rap song about her big boobs?
Oh, no, I haven't seen it yet.
I have not seen that.
Continue talking. I'll see if I can remedy that.
Go for it, man.
Knowledge.
You know, we all talk about how hot AOC is, and she is hot. Gotta give her props. 36 Ds, some big old yitties. But like, I'm trying to imagine, if we had been born early enough to see Nancy Pelosi in her prime, what levels of patriotism might we have been inspired to? I feel like we could have been so much better, man.
Probably would go to Vietnam.
okay.
Remember what you're fighting for, dude.
When Trump said "Make America Great Again," I'm pretty sure he was talking about Nancy Pelosi's prime titties.
All right, I got it for you.
All right,
let's hear the song.
Because this is a very serious podcast about very serious things.
I don't know why you keep tipping the people off like that.
You want to know who I would fuck? Nancy Pelosi. Someone tell that granny to blow me. I'd take her pictures, put them on the dresser, slide off her panties and proceed. I'd whip out her knock as fast as start throwing uppercuts like a boxing bag. I'd grab her by the nipples and I'd flip them up and down until they're flapping in the wind, and then I'd spin them all around and go, "Brrr." Have you seen them titties? Every time I think of them things, I'm giddy. She's far from the itty bitty titty committee. Come on, man, she could start her own team in the big leagues. I think about them just past today. Man, I bet those fuckers hang past the waist. If I laid on the ground with my head by your feet and she dropped them, they'd probably smack my face. You want to know?
Greatest white rapper of all time, by the way.
Wow.
So, anyways, Eric Adams, the Democrats really left him.
Back to politics.
Right. I think something that we can stay on the same vein, but move forward to a different topic. You're talking about like, well, what is an acceptable thing for lefties to cut for DOGE and stuff? I've been finding the same arguments when it comes to Ukraine and the peace treaty the ceasefire that's trying to be brokered. There are so many people that are just adamant, like Ukraine can't surrender. No, they have to. If we don't make sure that Russia gives back every square inch back to 2014, like it can't happen. And the amount of people that are so, I don't know, disassociated from the reality of everything. And I appreciate this. So there's a guy that I follow a lot of his stuff. Oh, he's the guy that hosted that video I sent you. He's been on a kind of not a rampage, but he's been pushing back against everybody, saying like, oh, Donald Trump can't do this. He can't. And he's like, what's your solution? Cool. Like, you think that Donald Trump can't be. So how would you win the war in Ukraine? Or do you just want to keep wasting American taxpayer dollars that Americans have no stomach for?
Ukrainian
do you want to keep just depleting? Yeah. Do you want to just keep depleting Ukrainian blood, American treasure? It's like, so what's your solution? And it's amazing how many people do the same thing. Like, well, Putin bad.
We have to keep pouring billions of dollars into fighting for democracy, obviously.
Right. And it is wild though that how few people have a very pragmatic approach to what's going on, because it's a World War I type war in a lot of like in its essence, like in the actual like tactical day to day. Now you get some drones instead of weird gas attacks, and but in the sense that it's attrition, and Ukraine is just running out of men, and there is going to be a point where they just won't be able to hold the line anymore. And it might be in 6 months. I don't know. It might be in 2 years, but eventually like Ukraine's just going to run out of bodies to put in front of the Russian steamroller. And then what? Like, do you want to lose? Would you rather give up 20% of your country today, or would you like to broker a peace in 3-4 years and give up 50% of your country? It's also so interesting to me because they had that emergency summit in Paris where the EU was, they said, well, if America's not going to include us at the table, we need to figure out what to do. And they had this emergency summit and they walked away with no solutions, no real plan. And it just blows my mind how dense and deaf everyone is to this. When people are like, oh, why is America paying for European defense? And it resonates with Americans, and now Europe is scrambling. Like, oh my God, like we don't have Daddy shit. America. It's like, yeah, Europe, you should have been paying attention for the last 30 years. Russia's your problem. It's not our problem.
Right.
Like,
yeah, every time y'all were online bitching about us not having universal health care, you should have asked yourself why that is.
Yeah, you should have been like spending your fair share of NATO that you agreed to. You should have been spending your 2 to 3% of your GDP on defense. But now you're scrambling And it's just like the tone.
We spent
deaf
700% of your
everything.
GDP on defense. What are you guys doing?
It's interesting because like post World War II, the UN was created as a way to like, hey, we're going to stop having all these conflicts in World War II. Or in Europe, we want everyone to be kind of connected and whatnot. And there was a conversation after the fall of the USSR about Russia joining NATO in like the early 2000s.
Yep.
And even then, Putin wasn't like totally against it. And, we had this kind of opportunity to kind of like make sure that the fall of the USSR didn't turn into some sort of infighting to the level of like what we're watching now. And like, we just totally dropped the ball.
For sure. We can't win the peace. See, that's the problem. Like with the West, like we cannot win the peace.
But it begs the question, like, could we ever get ourselves back there today to the point where like, maybe we could actually invite Russia to join NATO and turn NATO's purpose into something different than what it is right now. Because right now it's almost just.
Can you imagine how upset Zelensky going to be if Russia gets into NATO before he does?
Before he does, it's like that's actually what the negotiations are. It's like we're going no NATO membership for Ukraine. Russia, welcome to the fold. Dude,
it's like, what did we fight for then?
My understanding of the NATO offer was that Putin pitched it to George Bush in the early 2000s and said, let's pivot and let's focus on enemies that we both can agree are going to be problems, Iran and North Korea. And George Bush
is like, how about a proxy war with terrorists instead?
Now watch this drive.
It's it's wild how little of this is known and is understood. And I think that there's something very, I don't know, like depraved might be too strong of a word, because I think
like that word.
A lot of people, like if you talk to normies about Ukraine, I think they're so far removed from what's actually going on that they're well-intentioned, but they don't understand that spending more money to draw out a war is it's like they're very ignorant to the fact that this is going to cost like real people's lives. And
just look at anybody who said unprovoked. I mean, how many times do we hear, well, it was a completely unprovoked invasion? It's kind of died down a little bit now, and they found other things to justify, but like that's a pretty good indicator that somebody's not paying attention, because if you ask a Russian, they've got a whole litany list of like, here's everything America did that led us to this point. And we just kind of ignore that. And like all of that's ancient history. That was all pre this last president that we elected. So I don't know why they're even talking about that stuff anymore.
Pre this last president.
It's like, was that when the big man was getting 10%?
We kicked that guy out. Yeah, it's the same as the USD thing of like, well, we did prosecute that guy. We did recognize that was fucked up of us. We continued all of our same economic warfare against you throughout the years and continued to ignore every warning you gave us along the way of like what was unacceptable red lines to cross. But we shamed that guy. We elected the Trump guy that he hates. So I don't know why you guys are still upset about that.
It makes you wonder if there is some like deeper, like conspiratorial uniparty reason for always having Russia as an enemy. Is it just like boomerism, Cold War, lacking imagination? Or is there some sort of benefit to the industrial military complex of just having Russia as like a perma enemy?
Maybe, but I think this is one of those you can attribute to incompetence. I think this is Jerry Jones as your general manager type stuff. I think they know that
never let a Cowboys fan talk about politics.
Yeah, as soon as I get in the room with them, I'm going to talk them down on the money, and we're going to end up getting a hell of a deal here. They're never coming when we funnel tons of money into this coup attempt in the country adjacent to them that they're worried about. And what ends up happening is like all of these.
You give Dak Prescott $60 million contract.
that was personally that was my failed pullout of Afghanistan. I don't know about you guys.
How many more years you got left on that one, man?
It's
4.
Oh my goodness!
I think
that's a good analogy, though. That is a good analogy of like Jerry Jones as because there is
it's this assumption that we're the largest intelligence apparatus that the world has ever seen. of course we're going to pull the wool over their eyes and they're never going to see it coming. But what that also ignores is it's similar to that math of insurgency. The next guy realizes that you fucking hoodwinked his country. He's not happy about it either. And then it ends up to further conflicts down the road that we're dealing with of all these people who hate America for their freedom, or maybe for our turning over their democratically elected leaders to put in ones that are sympathetic to the United States.
Yeah, their proxy wars held on their soil, on their behalf with their blood. And I think that something.
Yeah, how's Ukraine going to feel about America in 10 years when they've lost a chunk of their land, ton of their influence, and a generation of their young men? Are they going to look favorably about the United States kind of encouraging them to fight this war the entire way?
Yeah, I imagine they'd probably feel fairly strongly about the last 15 years or so of our policy in Ukraine as well. We've been fairly interventionist politically, and now we have been obstructionist towards the peace for the last 4 years or so. What does Ukraine have to show for it at the end of all this? 650,000 dead people, another couple million who left and probably are never coming back, gigantic demographic hole, craters across most of the country. There's an entire band of the country, you can see it from space, where they haven't harvested crops because it's where the front is. But there's so many sections of this country where people just can't live, can't have lives, and nothing is ever going to come back for them. It's kind of like Chernobyl all over again, except on a much larger scale. There's nothing to really be grateful for the U.S. in this sense, and it's very odd listening to liberals who say things like "until the last Ukrainian" and whatnot, because it's not your blood. But
Damn.
It's just the worst demonic phrase you've ever heard someone say about another country, right?
Yeah, you're basically talking about human sacrifice. You're gonna kill all of them, whatever it takes. Right? I'll sacrifice every goddamn Ukrainian if it hurts the GDP of Russia just 10%.
Dude, it is insane too, and I wonder how. I've never really thought about the Ukrainian perspective until you said that, but they've got to be really, really fucking pissed at us. They at the fall of the Soviet Union, they were the third largest nuclear arsenal or armed country.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that.
And we went in there, the Budapest Memorandum, where it's hey, we'll give you territorial guarantees and assurances. I think they were assurances, not guarantees. No formal treaty, and that's how the American intelligentsia, the intelligence class, is well, it's not actually a real treaty, so we don't owe them security guarantees. They were assurances. But you gave up your stockpile of weapons. You've now watched that Russia took Crimea, and
we're
the West
sell
did
the
nothing.
Weapons back to you.
Yeah, it's like the West did nothing. Europe and Obama just watched as Russia annexed part of its country, and then you watch Joe Biden not only sabotage a peace deal that would have been better in every sense. I don't know if there's any world in which that peace deal that Boris Johnson went to sabotage at behest of the Biden administration. I don't know. I can't think of a world that we are in today that is better than if that had not occurred. And it's so hard to fathom.
If that was a 2-week conflict and we just adjusted the border by 5 miles.
Right. All of a sudden,
how much better would that have been than an entire generation of men dead?
For sure. And there may have been some territorial consent, you have to give up these 2 provinces that have already voted to not be they don't even want to be a part of Ukraine.
That you're kind of actively bombing anyway.
Right. There's
you have to give up your Gaza Strip, essentially. I guess actually, when I put it that way, you're giving up your Gaza Strip.
You're going to have to give up.
Right. It's for sure. And it's hard to imagine a world that when that didn't occur, that it's better. The timeline that we live in is better. And also there's all of these red lines. We're never going to give Ukraine ATACMS. Well, now you can have some ATACMS. So we're not going to give you Abrams. Okay, well, now you can have some Abrams. But we're definitely not going to give you some HIMARS, and you can't have F-15s. Okay, well, you can have F-15. And it's one of those things that if you look at it in hindsight, all we really did, we never invested enough for them to win. Yeah. And all we did was prolong their loss. And it makes you it does make you wonder, for what purpose? Was it just so that we could funnel a bunch of money into the military industrial complex? And I sometimes I don't want to be so reductionist where it seems so simple and it's almost like a childish worldview. But when I think about Ukraine, I have a really hard time getting off of that. It's like, did we really just like kill 1.5 million people, displace another, ruin the lives of tens of millions of people, just so American defense contractors and companies could make more money? Like, are we really that bad?
I mean, take a step back and like look at every foreign conflict. Like, what would be your one to point to that we improved the situation? Like maybe World War II, maybe. But
I mean,
outside of that, like everything since then, like how many countries have we improved that had American troops in their soil?
I mean, I guess it's a tough one, right? Because you could make arguments for them. They might not be good arguments, and sometimes
I would be skeptical. I can, top of my head, think of a lot more we fucked up. Granted, that's a little more what I'm focused on, but
yeah, that's fair. And I guess to give those people, dude, we could have had Cancun, dude. We could have had Veracruz, dude. We could have had the Baja, dude. Polk. We really messed that one up, dude. We could have had Cuba.
We got some decent territorial gains.
We could have had better.
Appropriate.
We could have had better, dude.
There wasn't even like a real cartel presence yet. I could have just snuffed that out before it started.
God, think of how nice it would be if we owned.
The cartel would have just moved further south, man.
Yeah.
The cartel.
I guess to be fair, back in the Wild West, there probably was like cartels. They just had big mustaches and sombreros with ponchos on instead of neck tattoos.
Probably just moving cattle too.
Like Red Dead Redemption gangs,
right? Yeah, I don't know. I guess I have like maybe there's like a revisionist historian in me where at least I can understand, right? Like if you had grown up knowing, like living through what you did, it might make sense why you would want to go to Korea. I'm not saying it's the right decision, but for those people at that time, it might make sense. Now, for us 80 years removed from that conflict, we can say like, well, that was, once again, a waste of lives. But the same thing happened in Korea, right? Like you could have.
That's kind of exactly my point, though. Like you can sit there and go like, well, at the time we didn't know.
Sure.
But if you go back and you look, and we have a 90% hit rate of making horrible decisions and causing more enemies to arise and ruining geopolitical situations, then at some point, don't you have to go like, maybe we're just not the fucking guys for the job. Maybe we don't need to be the world police. Maybe we don't understand every culture on such an infinite niche level that we can decide what's best for people who don't speak the fucking language we speak.
Yeah, that's fair.
Somebody has to do it though, and like obviously we're gonna make mistakes. We're gonna put radium in our foot warmers, not knowing that our feet are gonna fall off in the future. It doesn't mean that we shouldn't be ingesting radium before we step outside in Alaska. We've got to make mistakes and just like live the life that's given to us. And I think we take some steps towards being better, like getting rid of USA and maybe like stopping with all the regime change where we can. But like I don't think that we should totally just step off of the world stage. Because I think if we're gone, somebody else is going to step up. And like we're watching China do fucked up things all throughout Africa, through wherever they've got like any sort of presence. I don't think Russia would make a large attempt to world police, but like somebody would. And we can't.
Yeah, I don't think they have the economy to pull it off. It would have to. I mean, the only one I think that even has an argument of capability would be China.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think Russia's got the money to pull that kind of thing off.
Well, nobody.
My counter argument to that would be that, like, isn't this kind of how empires kill themselves as they become overextended in the same way we're watching America do right now, where we're going so massively into debt and having, other than this little experiment with DOGE, zero breaks on the track as far as like spinning ourselves into absolute failure and economic despair. And that's kind of typically how empires end. They end up overextending, overspending, and just kind of running out of steam at some point. Do we really think that China has the capability to do that? If we step back from the world stage, do we think China can actually overtake? I mean, for us, it took most of Europe getting wiped out in World War II. It was like a very special situation that allowed us to go like, oh, hey, we can step into this massive economic vacuum right here. And
Oh, damn, that's
become
crazy. You guys
superpower.
lost all your cities.
You know, to some
that's
extent,
wild,
we did
bro.
kind of like cause it as well. Like the Lend-Lease program was like a little parasitic. You know, it's not a coincidence that England had to give up all of their colonies at the end of the war. It wasn't
For
just
sure.
because, you know, a coincidence. You know, half of it was just us like totally fucking them over. But there will be a time when maybe we lose. I don't think it's today. I don't think it's going to happen in my lifetime. And if China happens to be the world power who can step up and do it, then, you know, go China, do your thing. It's your turn now. But right now, like, if we were to step down and like step away, China would try, but they can't do it either. They don't have the Navy.
That's my thing. I don't think they would have the capability. And I also think that, I mean, again, like you look at the way America formed into a superpower, like it took this massive war and vacuum of power for us to kind of step into it. And that was with most of the superpowers in the world having taken a massive hit just before that. So there wasn't any kind of opposition really on like a massive economic level for us to go through and kind of run mucksack through the entirety of Europe and then extend it into the Middle East. But with China, it's not like there's a massive vacuum if we step back today. If we fail as a country, then sure, there's a huge power vacuum. But if we step back a little bit on the controlling the entire Middle East and let China try to take that, I don't know. I just think that I don't know that how they could simultaneously fight our economic hitmen on some level and also end up ruling the world when there's all these other giant economic powers in their way that aren't tarnished by war.
I think
it's one of those neocon myths, you know. I think
China would also have
to for a long time.
They'd have to change their goals as well. Like most of their goals right now are just kind of extracting resources and sending them back to China. You know, they're not really interested in any sort of like nation building or colony building or like
it takes a lot of lithium to run those Gundam suits.
I think that if China wants to go fight a war where empires go to die in Afghanistan, we should not rob them of that right. I think that it's only fair, right? The Soviets did it, we did it. I think it's only fair that we let
kind
China
of a coming of age of modern day empire
for sure.
Story,
like we should let them go to Afghanistan and be like, all right, well, good luck. You know, it's like maybe you'll do better than everybody else since Alexander the Great.
Yeah, that really was kind of the last guy to run through there untarnished, huh?
We'll have to see. China's also kind of boned in the sense where they haven't had a chance to have a good military experience. Like none of their officers really have much experience. None of their troops have much experience. Like if for whatever reason the Taliban decided they wanted to fight again, it would actually be pretty good for China in terms of just like gaining some real world fighting experience. Because if you look at their performance when their troops are in the UN and they're deployed anywhere, it's god awful. Like there's people who talk about China like they're a real threat to us, like militarily, and like they don't have any experience for it whatsoever. And there's like a certain level of corruption among their officer class that's like antithetical to them actually succeeding on any sort of battlefield anywhere. Like, I mean, they're kind of boned and they need like a low level conflict with like a low tech opposition for them to kind of like, burn in the crucible of experience and become a fighting force. Cause they're not one right now.
Got to get that NGO or the NCO class built up. And I don't know, there is a lot of, I still don't think that, I think that to Logan's point, we could definitely pull back a little bit and it not be devastating. Like, I don't know if we have to go like complete 1800s before the Spanish-American War isolationist, because to Kiefer's point, someone's going to have to do it. But it's like we should definitely be brokering a peace in Ukraine.
I'm just saying, there's millions of brown people down south of us that we can economically fuck with. Why do we care about the Middle East? You know, let's just
absolutely. Do we have brown people?
Economic hitman to South America.
Oh,
like
yeah, I can hear Trump.
They have oil.
We have brown people at home. All right, we don't need to go. We have them here. Too many.
The brown people over there, they smell terrible. Everybody knows it. Stinges the nose. I think it's all the curry. It does something to your insides.
Well, if we were to step back slightly, I think it's certainly possible, especially with the way we've been encouraging our allies to like expand their navy. You know, on the Asian side, both Japan and South Korea have been expanding their navy. Japan's got their first aircraft carriers since World War II again. It's about time, right? Kind of exciting. And if we can get the Europeans to kind of like do their due diligence as far as like their NATO obligations, we could certainly like lighten up a little bit. Like, we brought back 20,000 troops from like European bases. Did we really need to have troops based in Germany or anywhere else? Maybe Italy for AFRICOM and a few other like key bases, but like most of those bases are just ceremonial. You know, it's like decorative towels in the bathroom you can't wash your hands with.
Right. The remnants of an age that no longer exists, right? A lot of those troops in those bases existed when the threat of the Russian menace was going to come pouring over, like through the Polish corridor once again. And, you know, and the only thing, what after World War II, they were asked, what would the Russians need to make to reach the Atlantic? And they just said boots, you know, and then like, oh my goodness, we got to scramble to stop the Russian horde. And it's like those days are past, right? And the arguments of, oh my goodness, if we let Ukraine fall, then what's next? Poland, the Baltics. It's like, I don't know. That seems like there's one. It's one thing.
Last decade trying to get back to the Black Sea. I don't know if they're going to make it all the way to the Atlantic.
Right, and it's one thing to invade Ukraine, and it's a whole nother thing to like openly engage in NATO territory. You know, there's a big difference. And I think that I guess one of the things I do like about this, I think that it is great that Europe scrambled. I think I love the fact that the French Prime Minister freaked out, called an emergency summit, and said, if the Americans aren't going to like guarantee, you know, security, if they're not going to give us security guarantees in Ukraine, what are we going to do? That's a conversation that should have been happening for the last 20 years. And I am thrilled that the Europors
they have abandoned us. We must break the crossbows back out.
We need our Joan of Arc. Where's our schizophrenic teenage girl to fight the Russians? I am stoked though that they're taking their own defense seriously, because they should have. Like, for too long they've been milk. You know, I mean, they've like suckled off that teat for way too long.
Mooches, ungrateful mooches.
That made me think of my other favorite article that I pulled a quote from here. And it talking about the USAID, and I put a little piece in here about, you know, like, hey, it's not really this humanitarian aid program you think it is. There's a lot of like economic hitman, regime change type stuff. But my favorite part of this article is in two back-to-back sentences, they talk about how the USAID is mostly a humanitarian program. That it's all about feeding the world and helping young kids watch Sesame Street and all of this good stuff. And then the next paragraph starts with, and if we shut down USAID, it will lead to China becoming a more powerful state on the economic international scale. And it's like, okay, well, which one is it then? Are we just doing humanitarian work, or is this the apparatus of which we control the world? It's one of the
power, baby. No,
China's greatest weakness are condoms in Gaza, man.
Dude.
No one wants to tell you that.
It's soft power, dude. That's what I said, Logan. You're so short-sighted. You don't appreciate the thin veil, right? It's like, without Sesame Street in Iraq, China will dominate the world. Like, you're so short-sighted. You don't get it.
The world is 3 transgender musicals away from complete destruction and annihilation. $37,000 is holding back.
Do you want Afghani kids growing up on Welcome to a Sesame Street?
Did you do Korean Sesame Street?
Something like that.
I only have one Asian accent.
Welcome to Sesame Street.
I was going to say, here
Sesame Street. That's Japanese.
Here, the cats and dogs are food, not pets.
My communist brother, it's time we tightened our belts.
Oh, man.
Oh, that's great. All right. So what other ideas did we have as far as like what you think the left should be cheering on in DOGE cuts? I had military spending. We kind of just covered that one. Corporate welfare was another interesting one I saw brought up. One of the very few lefties that I saw an opinion on what DOGE should be used for positively, I quite liked the idea of going after some of this corporate welfare.
Corporate welfare in what form exactly?
I guess I haven't specifically thought, but I mean, anytime they're bailing out an
So it's like
industry that
subsidies
operated
and-
at
okay.
a
So like
a lot of
bailouts of banks
subsidies
and
grants
insurance
and
companies
bailouts
and
mhm. Every bank that was too big to fail that intentionally operated at an unsustainable rate because they knew the government was going to bail them out in 2008.
Fair
you
enough.
know.
How many
Those kind of
NFL stadiums have gotten
That's
a
a good
portion
one,
of
too.
their construction bill paid for?
Well, I don't want to like degrade the American culture. That seems pretty important. I wouldn't get rid of it.
we like football, all right? That's not the chopping block. But I
Too
think
big to cut.
I mean, that's a fair point. I can't remember how much money the new Buffalo Bills stadium got, but it was to the tune of hundreds of millions of dollars of New York taxpayers. It was a ballot initiative and it passed.
And that
but
sucks because they have to pay that because there's nothing else in Buffalo to make you not kill yourself. So
isn't Niagara Falls kind of close? That's like,
I don't know.
or is that on the?
It is close to Buffalo, yeah, actually, but it might be on the Canadian side.
Oh,
I imagine it's probably split though, right?
So if you're depressed in Buffalo, you can pack up for a day trip, get out to Niagara Falls, and soak yourself just in time to realize you still want to kill yourself.
and then and then you're on the
wet.
right side of the border to go over the falls. All right.
There we go.
Okay.
Go and
Come on,
invade
God
Canadians.
damn.
You are so short-sighted tonight, Logan.
All right,
What caught you there, Keith?
$2.1 billion. The taxpayers are contributing $850 million.
850. I didn't realize it was that high.
Yeah, good God. So 600 million from the county and 250 million from the state, or other way around. 600 from the state, 250 from the county.
Wow.
That's got to piss off a Jets fan, right?
The Bills owners are only paying 560 million of this.
I guess actually, to be fair, I
So-
think Buffalo's the only team in the state of New York. I think both the Jets and the Giants
They're
are
in New Jersey.
Oh,
yeah.
yeah.
So the stadium is over budget, and in that contract, the owners have to foot the overage, and the owners' portion is now closing in on $1 billion because
Gotcha.
they're so
that poor bastard. I can't believe he got screwed like that. Fucking contractors.
And okay, this is weird. They're building an open air stadium in Buffalo.
No, they
Dude,
like
it's-
that shit.
it's the
They're
advantage,
about it,
dude.
Yeah,
So they
they
just
don't want
like
to give
being
up an open
uncomfortable.
air.
Dude,
Yeah, I'm sure.
would you-
I'm sure the owner's box is open air too, isn't it?
No, of course not. But when you got to deal with Tua, you know what I mean? Like, I want that poor little Hawaiian kid that
Put that Samoan
his-
dude out there
for
in the
sure.
snow.
put him in the snow.
Is
guess,
it cold,
dude.
Tua? Did they not prepare you in Alabama for this professional field?
Or when you're playing high school football in Hawaii.
But like, bruh, think of the fans. It's
Dude,
cold
they love
here
it.
right now.
I was about to
32
say, you're
degrees
not
out.
hurting the
love
fans'
it.
feelings in Buffalo, man. They love that shit.
Dude,
They're about it.
you're talking to a fan base that shows up and shovels the stadium in preparation for free.
Not
Okay.
just that, has a
What the
waiting
fuck?
list to be on the shovel crew. You
Dude,
can sign
that's-
up for it and get bumped to next week because they have too
I
many
mean-
shovelers showing up.
This is like Kiefer. This is the only thing that city has. Like that's like
I
if
get
it's
it.
not
That's
for the
I
if,
get
like
it.
without the Bills, like they have nothing. Like
As
they're
soon as you
they're,
get
they're
Buffalo wings in
Canada.
another county, this is all they had.
They do have some epic pre games. I'll give them that. Watching them tailgate looks like
Busting to
fun.
the tables. They
Oh,
are a
dude,
fun
yes,
fan
but-
base. I'm not going to take that away from the people of Buffalo. They seem like a really fun fan base. Maybe it's
But I
because they
don't
only
know,
get to have joy 9 months out of the year on Sundays. You know,
You gotta
So-
just give them an indoor stadium. I
No.
feel like that was cruel.
No way, dude.
So
way,
cool.
make
the
them-
thing is,
make
I
them
think
shiver.
that the fans would revolt if you tried to build an indoor stadium for them. They would get mad.
Really,
They like the
really.
cold. Them in Green Bay, man.
Green Bay is
Green
another
Bay
one. When
is
they build
love
their next stadium, I hope it's also an indoor
It
stadium.
won't be. It will
It won't
not
be.
better be.
You know,
It'll
because
definitely
they're
be
open
they're
air.
a real football team, unlike that purple and white that you support. Ooh,
Yeah.
we're gonna
Look, when
build a
Minnesota,
it's
when we built
cold.
the
It's
dome, it's really
Minnesota.
nice. It's really nice. It changes the winter games. Now people want to show up. You can bring your kids out, the family and whatnot. You can bring your grandma, your aunt. She can watch the
You
game
can-
as well.
There are plenty of grandmas and aunts and kids at Steelers games too, bro.
I've never really thought about this
Pittsburgh
one
is retarded.
before, but do you think that the racial demographic of the fan bases might be why somebody in Minneapolis wants to have a closed air stadium versus the whitest team in the league in Green Bay is like, nah, we're going to keep it open air.
Certainly possible.
We
You
actually
bring in
got
a bunch of
lot of
Somalis, you
damage.
got to build the stadium.
You got to build the dome.
Somalis are not a cold weather people, my friend.
Not a lot of winters in Black Hawk Down.
That's about the only thing that could have made that day worse. Snow.
It's snow. Damn, that's rough. I think, well, if they, on the DOGE thing, I would really like if they would go through and present it in like a clear, and I know I said this last week, but it'd be nice if they would present it in a clear, concise fashion. And at the, like every week, kind of like a fireside chat, like, hey, these are the things that we found. Some of this isn't outrageous. These are the outrageous things we found. But here is like a full audit of it. And I know that Elon says that you can go to the DOGE website, but there's literally nothing on there. Last time I checked, which was a couple of days ago.
There was some stuff on it when I went and checked yesterday, but you click it and it's like all you get is a number value, a name of an organization, and then you can look up like the tax form they filled out, basically like the bureaucratic form, which you like read halfway through and you're like, I'm actually not going to read this. I've already lost
for sure. And that's all of America. You know what I mean? And so if you're going to do this, it needs to be in a digestible form for Americans to be able to understand. And I think that if you did that, then you would have widespread support for it at the end of the day. And I think you could convert some. But yeah, ending corporate welfare. I for one, just love to see government being slashed.
Oh yeah,
it's
all day.
It's a good thing. I am down for it, and it's nice that because Jamie sent us that link of Bill Clinton talking about it. I mean, isn't that crazy that we actually like had a balanced budget under Bill Clinton?
Yep.
And now all of us,
it's a misnomer.
Exactly what I thought when I watched that.
What's that?
The Bill Clinton thing is a misnomer.
Explain to me.
They were pulling money out of the Social Security fund and using it to say they had a balanced budget.
So they're robbing Peter to pay Paul and said, "Look,
they were taking our retirement fund the whole time." It turns out
it's why they had that exactly. But it's why they had that debate in like '99 and 2000 about turning Social Security into a lockbox, where you couldn't actually pull money out. And I don't know if they ever changed it, but that was 100% what they were doing in the budget. If you actually look at the budget for the year and look at the Social Security like inflows and outflows, the numbers add up to a pretty significant deficit that is totally in line with everything for the years before.
Fair enough.
It's kind of sad, unfortunately, because it's like I wanted there to have been a time period I could look at in my past where like we've had a balanced budget, but
when's the last time that even
I don't
existed?
Know. I'm not sure. If I had to guess, I would suspect it would be probably sometime in like the 30s, maybe the 20s, when people were like struggling.
Under Calvin Coolidge.
Maybe Coolidge.
Silent Cal.
Well, 2001 pops up first. So when's the last time before that? Because we just said that was fake.
Fake news. This says Lyndon Johnson did it in 1969.
Okay, yeah, guns and butter. That kind of makes sense.
Yeah, that's fair.
Interesting. Wow, it's crazy.
Yeah, 1969. Yeah, that is pretty fucking wild.
That's insane. That for so long that
closing in on a century of not having a balanced budget.
It's what's wild too is a lot of the arguments against it. I've seen people put it in terms of like, okay, cool. You cut this program. This amounts to 7 seconds of spending by the federal government. Or you say like you cut this program. It amounts to like no more than a week of. And I don't know how people look at that and be like, well, then we're spending too much fucking money. You know what I mean?
Shit.
If you can. In
fact, I've heard the opposite more often where it's like, well, it's not even coming close to the budget, so I don't know why they're bothering with it. It's like that's also a brain dead take. We're already spending such an irresponsible amount of money. Why are we even care about the $100 million?
Why do we care?
It's a weird philosophical take too, because nobody lives like that in their real life. Some friends of mine ran a marathon this last weekend, and like, who's gonna say like, but it's so long? You're just starting with a couple steps, bro. I'll give up. Why are you even running? You finished 1 mile. Good. It's 32 more miles. You're never gonna finish. Like it's such a weird like standpoint to take in terms of like money, where like, okay, we've saved a day, we've saved a week, we saved 3 months. Eventually, maybe we'll save a year.
Right.
Maybe we won't get there, but like we'll get somewhere. And it's very weird. Like it's a weird philosophical standpoint because it's not something anyone would ever make in any point in their life whatsoever. You know, you never see anyone living like that, so it's a weird thing to try and force on people.
Especially when the alternative is like massive levels of inflation and economic failure on a large scale in this country. It's like, is it worth trying, maybe, guys? Can we give it a shot? Just
It's
too
like
late. Fuck us all.
It's like when I'm you know, wheelbarrowing my dollars to the store like it's Weimar Germany. It's like, well, this is inevitable, right? It's like, thank God we stopped Elon. You know?
Thank God we got in the way.
It's like I for one welcome this type of government spending.
Ironically, I also am technically a billionaire now with my wheelbarrow, but
we're way better off under this rampant inflation and monetary collapse than we would have, you know, under the Orange Man bad.
Exactly. Whenever I stop drinking, I get the shakes. So clearly, I just got to keep pouring them back, brother.
It hurts when I stop drinking, so I'll just keep drinking.
I think maybe my biggest one that I found is odd that we're seeing a lot of pushback on from the left is like, and it hadn't even begun yet, but the talks of like dismantling the FBI. And I think it's especially weird to me because the FBI, according to any good lefty 5-10 years ago, maybe we got to go back pre-Trump, but you know, 2008, when I just graduated high school, if you talk to any lefty in college, they're like, yeah, all they do is fuck up progressive movements, put in agent provocateurs. They entrapped Martin Luther King. And now there's a new documentary that's come out about them. Like
they lost a wrongful death lawsuit against Martin Luther King's family. And it's very weird having that conversation. Like, even with my family, they don't believe it. And it's like, you could just Google it. It's not even like, they're not even hiding it.
Right.
It's just
like, no, we shot him. Yeah.
Even there's been a bunch of stuff coming out lately. I guess it's kind of a new turnover, but there was the tapes they sent him of all his infidelity, and then a letter suggesting he kill himself. Like, Jesus Christ. Strong.
Sure.
A guy that we pretty much unanimously consider a hero in our country now. And this is like all the things they did to him. I actually have another fun video while we're on the Martin Luther King subject here.
Oh boy. Is it about the orgies or a different one?
No,
we're about to find out.
It's from Professor Cat.
Oh, some people think that guys like Martin Luther King were compromised by the CIA. Do you ever believe stuff like that? There's a lot of conspiracy theory stuff about that, you know?
Somebody says it's a conspiracy, but that doesn't make it the case. We are talking about the FBI and the CIA. What do you think they do? So maybe we're unclear about what we think these agencies do. So now the question becomes, hey, do you think they be doing their job? I do think they be doing their job. You mean history? Yes. You think they get everybody? They get everybody. So again, not conspiracy theory at all. The only way that there could be a FBI file for us to be able to get 30 years after his death is if there's an FBI file, correct?
Right. Oh,
That's a really good take. It's like,
I thought it was really well put by Cat.
They're doing their job. It's
do you think they're doing their job? I do think they're doing their job. Quite well and heavy-handedly, if you ask me.
Yeah. That is a wild one for the lefties to defend. Especially because there's never been a Democratic leader of the FBI. Like, it's always been Republican led. And for Democrats to now be like, put my FBI. What's that?
I said, what good's a gay intelligence leader?
Yeah, fair enough. It's just it is crazy because you would think that the left would have some sympathy for, I don't know, the assassination of MLK and Martin Luther King, and who were the other? Shame
How
on me
about,
for not remembering all of the other black dudes that were raided and gunned
Malcolm
down.
X. Yeah,
Oh, their names all
Black
sound the
Wall
same to
Street,
me.
Tulsa. I mean, it goes on and on. There's like
Right.
a bunch
how
of
about
events that anyone
Down
would talk
to
about.
the FBI putting agent provocateurs in BLM to sell them guns and then rounding them up on gun charges. Like there's one that happened within this last presidency, guys. Or Jimmy Dore was going over I forgot the guy's name, some African name, the mayor of Jackson, Mississippi. Maybe or maybe not corrupt, but they just pulled an entrapment scheme on him by the FBI to get him arrested. Like that happened this year.
Right.
And
Without the
he's a big-time
FBI.
progressive Democratic leader in a heavily Republican place.
That's so crazy. Who's supposed to entrap a militia to kidnap the governor of Michigan? You know, it's like we don't have the FBI.
Yeah,
like,
that's
what
really
are we
one I had on the list.
who's supposed to like provoke Randy Weaver to sell a shot-off shotgun? It's like, no, that's not short enough. I need you to saw off exactly 0.7
Hell, even in the
inches
Whitmer
and come
case,
back.
That one came to light because two of the guys refused to take the plea deals and they won in court.
Yeah, because they were the only two people not part of the fucking scheme. And it turned out to be 10 conspirators.
They were the only two.
They were the only two real people.
Yeah, they weren't agents and they weren't undercovers. Like it's kind of wild. And you know, there's almost like no real like ethnic group you can even look at who can say like, oh, the FBI is good for us. Not white people. Maybe Jews, I don't know. But even like the Muslims kind of got fucked over by the FBI for a long time, like the terror of Texas, the random jihadi things where they're always kind of like trying to entrap like people who
the shoe bomber.
Just they don't have the IQ to have actually made anything. The FBI is like every step of the way, just like, here, let me help you make your bomb. No, you need more nitroglycerin. Here's a place where you can get guns. I know a guy. Here, come with me. And it's like at every step, like your hand is getting held to the point where it's like this guy wasn't ever actually going to bomb anything, and all of a sudden now we've got like a Muslim dude shooting up a military base, and it's like he's 85 IQ. He's not making it. Come on, guys.
It's like watching To Catch a Predator or any of the spinoffs on YouTube now, where they've got all these like private pedophile catching rings, and like the first couple episodes, you're like, it's fun watching these pedophiles get what they deserve. And by season 3, you're like, oh, they all have IQs of 60 and they were entrapped by the first female that talked to them online. You know, and yeah, like Brandon showed up to have sex with a 13-year-old, which is not okay. But it's like this guy was going to respond to whoever told him to come over to his house because he doesn't have anybody who talks to him.
Yeah,
there was one on Twitter a while back, and like everybody was just cheering, and the guy's just like beating up this dude who shows up, and he's like, he lives with his mom. He's in his like late 20s. He talks with like a very clear slur. It's very obvious he has some sort of syndrome or something wrong with him. And like the entire mob is just cheering for this guy getting beaten up for showing up to have sex with like, I think it was like an 8th grader. And like, yeah, no, totally wrong. But like this dude is not capable mentally of ever doing this. On his own.
There was no 8th grader on the planet that he was going to talk into having sex with, except for a fake 8th grader that led the conversation that way online. You know,
100%,
for sure.
man.
There is something. It's not to excuse, right? It's not to excuse the behavior, but there is so much of that where, I mean, I'm very undecided on Kash Patel only because I've done so little research on him to have an educated opinion. But I think anybody that wants to be like, oh, we're just gonna like turn it into a museum of the deep state. It's like I like that. And it's like there might be some problematic things that he said or might do, and so I guess we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. But it's crazy to think that there's like this department of government being funded by our stolen money that it just out there like provoking and entrapping people. It'd be one thing if like the FBI was this impeccable organization. I'm sure there's branches and parts of it they're doing good. They're going after pedophile rings not associated with high-ranking judges, officials, celebrities, politicians, and Epstein Island. I'm sure there are other pedophile rings that they're going after.
More important ones, I'm sure.
For sure. I'm sure that there is some good work that's being done in that organization, but it's hard to want to cheer for it when it has such a history of just doing shitty, fucked up things. And it's like, oh, it's the same argument when people are like, oh, the CIA.
It doesn't help when you uncovered probably the biggest pedophile ring in human history and nothing really comes of
And
that.
you sealed it, right?
Mhm.
Exactly. And it's you're telling me that this organization that has run amok, that has done documented shitty things, that's never undergone any sort of reform or true oversight, now all of a sudden they're the good guys. Great. I'm glad the CIA just self-policed themselves into good behavior. Same with the FBI. I'm
Well,
glad that they're good guys now.
that leads to my next bit here. So what only time we've probably ever seen the FBI really turn against the right in favor of the left is probably during Trump's presidency. You had like the slow playing of the Mueller probe into the Steele dossier that they pushed because they knew there wasn't going to be anything actually come out of it. So they kind of slow play that, and the suppression of the laptop story with Hunter Biden, and all of that playing out while they're kind of overlooking the Hillary Clinton email scandal of a very similar ilk. So I guess what I'm trying to get at with all of that is this part of the reason we're seeing the left be apprehensive about tearing into the FBI? Because they're kind of like Golem with the ring, they finally got a taste of the power and now they're like hissing at you when you want to throw it into the volcano. Like, we just got to use it against the right. How could we possibly give up this power now?
Yeah, it could be some form of just short-term memory. What have you done for me lately? And in that aspect, yeah, the FBI is certainly a valuable tool for the left. But I don't know. I imagine it's going to return to the mean fairly quickly. And this might be the only opportunity we have to dismantle it. So I would imagine from a leftist perspective, there would be some interest, at least, in seeing what ghosts or skeletons are hiding in the closet.
God. Maybe that's the white pill right there. Maybe we just pray that the next Democratic candidate is going to be running on a platform of, let me show you how DOGE can be done right. Let me cut some stuff.
Yeah.
Give me
it's a big white pill.
brother.
It's huge white pill.
I will show you how
right now
to
loves
butcher
it.
a pig.
We got Dave Hogg as the vice chair of the DNC, and it's not looking like they have any answers yet, or really any sort of move towards. They left a bunch of like 80-20 issues just on the table, like things that like almost everybody is like just down with, and they took the 20% side. So like they're gonna have to like really change their party policy if they want to actually like move and be useful in any meaningful way. And I'm not seeing it yet, man. So I know it's a white pill, but I laugh every time I hear it because it's just, where are they at? Where are they?
They haven't even realized how bad they've lost yet. They haven't even begun the process of licking their wounds. If this is if we're to take like a trauma analogy, they're still in the shock adrenaline portion, and they don't realize that there's a gaping hole in their leg yet. Because there's still so much, they just haven't come to terms yet that they're hurt. And I think that's why you see such like mediocre moves or none whatsoever, because they don't realize that they have effectively lost the culture for probably the next 6 to 10 years.
They even lost half the Jews.
The Republicans fuck it up.
Yeah, and by all means, the Republicans will fuck it up. Donald Trump will step in it sooner rather than later. My guess is, there. You know what I mean? It's like you can't win forever. Eventually the tide's going to swing. It's going to turn. They're going to mess it up. They're going to blow it. They're going to have some, and I'm sure there'll come a point where people are just tired. Like the culture's just going to be ready for a shift, but it's not anytime soon. It's definitely not coming up. And like, it's not going to be like the blue wave in the midterm this year.
Yeah, it feels like that pendulum's still headed to the right.
I think
past
so.
Center a while ago, and it feels like it hadn't hit the apex of that swing yet.
And something that that video I sent you, I was watching it before we hopped on. There was 8 Gen Zers, and they were asked the question, do you think that Elon has too much power? 3 of them raised their hand. And then the next question was, do you think that he has just the right amount of power or not enough? And then 5 of them raised their hand. And so it's like, oh, that's interesting that the young kids they're not
Yeah, it doesn't boast well for the Dems if the next generation to get voting access is 5-3 Republican.
Yeah, I think that, and it's probably what we're talking about, the same vein of like Russia bad, right? It's like the Cold War called in and wants its foreign policy back. At a certain point, you got to move on. You can't just say that Russia's the enemy forever, even when they're not, because if you do, then you take steps and you create the situation to actually make them the enemy. And I feel like it's the same here. People are just so browbeaten, orange man bad, conservatives hate you, they hate your, like, they want to make sure that they can force breed you and turn you into like reproduction farms. It's like all these really bad takes, and it's just, I think the culture overall is just like, actually we're really tired of like women pilots crashing planes.
Yeah, you guys have started coming across like toddlers throwing tantrums, and you're getting about that much attention from the adults in the room.
Let's
I wonder.
take the question.
Go ahead.
I'm about to change the subject, so if you want to stay on subject, you should go first.
Okay, I do have one more. I was just going to say, on the converse side of that, is a lot of this sentiment of like, because the Republicans have always kind of had the libertarian talking points when it comes to reducing government, but never really any interest in doing so. When it comes down to brass tacks, they're more about like, well, no, we actually do have to be the world police. I wonder how much of this sentiment from the right and this complete willingness to go through and gut the government finally, after decades of this rhetoric and no actual action, is kind of from the same thing. The left got the power for 4 years, I guess 8 years, and 4 years, excuse me. And they got to kind of shit their pants a little bit and go like, oh man, it is kind of scary being under the focus of the intelligence industry. And I don't know that I want to be fighting the intelligence apparatus after this.
I don't really view it that way, but I'll let you go first, Matt. If you want.
I was going to say that I think that there needs to be a new way that we talk about the right, because the conservative party of Ronald Reagan and George W. Bush,
The left and the correct.
it's gone. You know what I mean? Like, that is, those people are now called rhinos, right? Like, if you have somebody that subscribes to good old Reagan conservatism, the Republican Party of today, people that would call themselves conservative, look at them as big government obstructionists. Like, nope, like, screw Ronald Reagan. Like, what a weird world. Like, you'd think that Daddy Reagan would always be revered, and now he's treated like Huey and the Boondocks. Like, Ronald Reagan's the devil.
And George W. Bush was the last great Republican president, according to half the nation.
According to the left, that's correct.
For sure. And there's a lot of, and so I think that there's so much fervor for this, not because it's like we don't want to live under lefties, or it's just like, I think that a lot of the people that subscribe to the right are just tired of government. They're tired of being passed over. They're tired of watching the dreams that they were sold erode away. And that's true for our parents to a certain degree. Like, they've watched the American dream whittle away, maybe not for them, but they've watched it become unattainable for their children and their grandkids. And I think that there's just been a huge shift to where the right's just over it, in terms of like, we really don't like government anymore. Because like, now you get people that say George Bush lied us into wars and Obama expanded them. You would have never heard that 15 years ago.
I mean, you would have heard it from some people.
Yes, but not mainstream right to them.
Yeah, I know. I will say that like the Republican Party today is a reflection of like the last 16 years of what's been like an internal power struggle. And it's going to keep continuing as well. If you were to look at, let's say, in 2010, and ask who were the influential figures in the Republican Party, in the RNC, you get names like Paul Ryan, Mitch McConnell, Kevin McCarthy. Ryan, McConnell on his way out, and Kevin McCarthy will be gone soon as well. There's this, I would say it started with Ron Paul, where essentially there was an upstart movement to take over the primaries and move the Republican Party in a completely different direction. And I won't go over it because I've talked about it here before, but essentially what happened is the RNC stabbed him in the back and fucked around with the elections. A bunch of staff was kicked out in the RNC, and that actual movement that was pushing it, like the Liberty Movement, ended up turning into, Tea Party, ended up turning into the Freedom Caucus, ended up turning into all these little like offshoots that was completely antithetical to the standard RNC and where they were going. And you're watching like people getting replaced slowly with people who lean more towards Freedom Caucus. And, that's that form of liberty than, the uniparty shills of most of the RNC. And I'd say Trump is a reflection of this in terms of just being able to win in the 2016 primary. And even now in this like current election, like the way the party is moving, it's asking the rhinos to either get on board or get left. And I 100% expect that Scott Pressler and the Persistence is going to be focused on primarying a lot of these rhinos and anyone who just isn't on board with the agenda, which is ultimately good for us as a country and also ultimately good for the RNC as well. I don't think this is like just a 4-year reaction to, being targeted by the Democrat Uniparty, because like the Democrat Uniparty works with the Republican Uniparty, and when they see their homies on the other side hurting, they're stepping in to do whatever they can to protect them. And much the same way where you watch people like Mitt Romney say like, I'm changing parties to the Democrat now. And it's like, he's not changing parties. He was always a uniparty shill, right. And he's just moving to where the uniparty is more powerful. And I would say that, watching them say certain things like, revering George Bush now. They're inviting George Bush Jr. out to like events with the other presidents, talking about his legacy as a Republican president. They'd never say that until they have to, which is, this point now. And as they lose that coalition within the RNC, I think the parties end up becoming much more divided in terms of what they want to do and what they try to do. And the only way they end up coming back into some sort of like balance is if we get that upstart from the left, where it's more of a populist movement and focused on what do people want, what's popular, and like the 80 of the 80-20 issues, like the Democrats left a lot of 80-20 on the table because they never had to fight for them before. Because the Republicans didn't go for any of the 80 either. They were just kind of like, we're going to cut spending when we're out of power, not when we're in power. We watched Paul Ryan fight tooth and nail for a balanced budget in 2015. And then in 2017, we watched him tell us that, like, guys, there's a lot of important things we need to get in the budget right now. We're going to cut the budget next session. And they just kept pushing it until they were out of power. And then all of a sudden, oh, no, the budget's really important again. And watching that group slowly get eviscerated out of the party gives me a lot of hope in terms of like actually seeing the Republican Party deliver on promises it's made for decades and never completed. And it would be very interesting to see a Democrat Party aim to deliver on promises they've made for decades and never completed. And I don't know what those promises are, but I imagine there's quite a lot of things that are maybe sensible that people on the left want, and they always kind of get rope-a-doped by the uniparty. But whatever those things are, they're just not part of my wheelhouse, because right wing to the core. I'm a libertarian fascist in my bone. So,
it's the only way to be.
100.
Yeah, that's interesting. I wonder how many more of those defectors that we see moving forward, especially if we don't get that populist reform on the left, which they seem to have not taken a whole lot of steps towards that just yet. And who knows, maybe it takes, I was about to say, maybe it takes some impact first, that like once we're 2 years into the Donald Trump presidency and we're like looking at a budget that's kind of close to getting balanced and people start cheering that on, do they have to start going like, oh shit, this is it's not going to plan, guys?
I have an interesting question for y'all, and it's kind of funny. Obviously, if you look at the RNC, there's a lot of people there who have switched over. Trump used to be Democrat. Elon used to be Democrat. Tulsi, RFK, a lot of Democrats over here. And then you look at the Democrat side, now you got Mitt Romney over there. You got some of the Warhawks going over. Cheney, Liz Cheney.
The ghost of her father.
Yeah. Who's that dude from Arizona whose name I can't remember?
John McCain.
Yeah, his daughter as well. Do you think there will be a time in the future where people say like, no, that was us. The party switched. we were always against COVID. Or some other nonsense. Do you think it might happen just based on what's happening right now?
It's quite possible. I mean, all of the alt-right guys who probably have some like questionable racial opinions are the first ones to be like, well, you know, the Democrats were the ones that were fighting for slavery. It was the Republicans that freed all the slaves. And you're like, yeah, but you guys have some rough opinions that probably didn't match up with the Republicans back then.
Yeah, that's.
But they love to do that
totally
thing of like,
fair.
actually, you guys were the bad guys. And I have this statistic about 13% of the population, if you guys want to look at it really fast.
I do wonder, because party switches are always so fascinating and they happen quite suddenly.
This might be the exact situation for it. I mean, we're talking about cutting the budget to the CIA and the FBI during a time when the intelligence agencies probably really need to be on top of the ball, as one of their two uniparties is threatening to no longer be a part of the system, you know?
Yeah, and what better time to cut it?
Right.
I for one welcome this type of shakeup, and there's something to, like, I think way too many people have a very elementary view of civics and government, and they think that it's like an Uber ride. Like, oh, I vote for my Democratic congressman or my Republican governor, and therefore I get exactly what I want. And too many people don't have, like, government's not a ride share or that's going to like get you exactly where you want. It's public transportation. It's like you can get on the C train and get to the neighborhood that you're trying to go, or you can get on the D train and go across town. Which one would you rather get on? And I think way too many people have this super simple, like, well, government's like, it's not giving me everything that I want. I'm not getting my way with it, and it's not supposed to. And I think that in light of everything that's been going on during the first month and a half of the Trump administration, we're starting to get people to come around to that idea where it's like, it's like insert moderate caller to one of the shows. Do I love the fact that Elon Musk might have access to a bunch of people's private information, tax dollar, like tax records, yada, yada? No, I'm not. However, government spending and abuse is way out of control. And so if we have to shake up the tree, then so be it, right? Like, I don't love Donald Trump, but this is way better than if it was Kamala Harris. And it's been really interesting to see kind of the reluctant acceptance of, like, well, this probably is better than a Harris administration. And it's like, I don't love it, but it's better than what we could have gotten. And I just think it's so fascinating to watch people not like justify, but come to terms in real time. And back to like the party flips and stuff. Like there's something that I have yet to wrap like my head around. Is like, we witness a radical culture change, and it hasn't sunk into me, like the long-term effects of it, the short-term effects, how deep it goes. I'm still wrapping my head, but we have watched, like, it's flipped, it's swung, and I didn't expect it to happen so quickly.
Well, you know what they say, people go bankrupt slowly and then all at once. And I would say this is something that's been burning slowly, and now we see it happen all at once. But I would say it's been percolating in the back for a long time.
No, that's fair.
I wonder how much we should have seen that too, of like, what quicker way to get a young person to do anything than tell them they can't. And then we spent all of their formative years telling them that this list of 100 words are no words, and you need to use this gendered language when or ungendered language when you're in this room, and you need to be, and they're finally just like, how about y'all shut the fuck up with all these rules
and microaggressions, and they're like, we just really want to say faggot.
Yeah, it kind of hurts. I play Among Us with a group, and I haven't played with them because I've been out of town for a long time. And I finally came back and I played last night, and I was told,
careful, that might be Catch a Predator there you're playing with.
Dude, that's a whole nother conversation, dude. That's just but I was told that I was making people feel uncomfortable by saying retard all the time, and I didn't know how to respond to that. It actually deeply hurt my feelings. It's like
that they would be offended by your language.
Well, yeah, because it's like, I don't know. I have a very pure heart.
All right, guys, I will make y'all a concession. Which one of you guys is actually retarded? I'll only say it to the other people.
Yeah, no, that's what I was thinking though. I was like, wait, is someone here retarded? That I've been calling someone? Because like I would never do that. Because I think that's kind of awkward. But it's like
maybe you should have gone with the classic, like, oh guys, it's okay, I'm actually retarded.
I was leaning towards that too, but like I don't know. I was like, maybe I just don't want to play with these people anymore. You know? Like,
there's that too.
That's like the real answer that was like coming to my head.
Oh, we're not having fun when we play video games? All right. I guess I'll find another group.
Like it's a child's game, dude. And like that's like the weirdest part about it, dude. Because dude, there's sometimes children who play, and like I have to remember that because it's a children's game, I need to act in a way that I think would be responsible in case children are present. Well, whether they are or not. And personally, I think saying retarded is a perfectly responsible thing to do if children are present. But
Yeah,
you know,
fine.
Don't make like sexual jokes with the bros that I normally make with like y'all and whatnot, which is like a weird thing to get used to. Is there's all these spaces on the internet that you might have grown up being a part of and always being like, oh, everyone here is the same age as me, and you might assume that about some of those spaces, even if they say like 18 plus, but like that's not the case at all, and it's very weird to like wrap my head around like that aspect of it, like actually trying to be a responsible adult when I'm online, which
That's stupid gay.
feels so weird. It's so gay.
I think when you're getting old like that, you're supposed to abandon online and like start a garden or something.
Yeah, no, that's really what the answer is.
That's but it's like, but we all remember. I remember in like 2006, 2007 being hard-r'd by full-grown adults in Call of Duty chat rooms. You know what I mean? It's like there's maybe that's like a new thing because I remember being called very nasty things as like I'm like 14 and obviously like these are like, like I can
we
hear
lost
you
our
dirty,
defense
sir.
mechanism. Like now that's crippling to a kid and they go and do an HR speech about it. But like back in our day, we just knew you started talking about fucking that guy's mom and eventually you beat it with the game.
For sure. It's like how's it feel to work your shitty job and come home and get beat by a teenager?
You're only gonna get worse at this game as your eyes age, you old piece of shit.
Oh man, I hope it comes back because oh no, to your point, Keith, it's like when I say it's do you think when people get mad at me about certain things, it's like, do you really think that that's who I am? Like I just run around belittling and disparaging people about immutable traits that they can't help? It's like what type of monster do you think I am? Like that's mean. Why would you think that I would ever go out of my way to actually be mean? Like that's just fucked up. And so when I say those words, I say them because they need to be said, not because I would like disparage some. Like if you actually have a mental handicap, do you think that this one would do? Knock the ice cream cone out of your hand and be like, "Go on the short bus, retard." No way. It's fucked up.
I have way more nuance to my interactions interpersonally like that. And if I ever had an issue with a retarded guy, I'd call him a faggot to be nice. I mean, I would.
And he'd probably appreciate that.
But only if he was being a faggot.
But like I just have a pure heart, and it's always weird for me when people are telling me that my language is offending them because like I say nothing but like nice things to people all the time. I just call them a retard while I'm doing it,
Right.
It's
I constantly launch into my Eddie Murphy versus Bill Cosby speech. Because Bill Cosby spent my entire childhood telling Eddie Murphy to pull his pants up and to quit cussing and to quit running around with all these women. And you need to be a good, respectable black man like me. And then it turned out he was raping every woman he came in contact with. And Eddie Murphy now makes children's movies, So it's like for all that cussing and wearing his pants low like a gangster that he did, he turned out to be a pretty upstanding guy for the most part, it seems like.
It's the grandstanding. It's like
the comes out, then I'll change my mind probably.
It's like it's the person that's like super, super against gays, like overtly against gays. And it's like, bro, we all know what you like. We know what your fantasies are. Like
you're trying to keep them away from you, huh?
For sure. Like you don't have to hide
help yourself, huh, brother?
Right. It's like, it's an abomination. It's
Hey,
like,
buddy,
it's
I got bad news. Gay is not contagious. You were born with that, man. That's your condition.
It's like, yeah, and you can't just scream at the rest of us to make it like your own impulses go away. Like that's a you problem, not like the rest of us don't have an issue with this. That's a you thing.
We need legislation to stop all these dicks from being willingly put in my mouth because I can't rightfully resist it on my own.
Without government, who's going to protect my butthole?
It is interesting how they kind of like wolf in sheep's clothing predator thing like constantly repeats itself over and over and over again. And I don't really know what to do about it because like obviously like how do you convince someone that you're actually a good guy while you're calling them all these slurs? I have no fucking idea, but it's interesting to see the other side of it because there is always someone who's kind of like wrapping themselves up in like the appearance of good doing, the appearance of looking good, the appearance of saying nice things. And like, you know, there are people who are genuinely good and kind like that, but I found them to be like less than 20% of people like that are actually genuinely good people. It's like most of the time that's just kind of a cover for antisocial behavior.
That's fair. What if the left is right about all of this? What if Donald Trump is actually one of the worst things that could have ever happened, and we're just so turned off by all of their screeching for so long that we're not paying attention? Like it turns out then there's like, maybe you guys like if only you guys hadn't been so fucking insufferable for the decade leading up to it, we would have listened to you.
We might have caught on to it. As Elon
my
Musk
answer is good riddance photo. I will ironically put on my SS hat. No, there's layers of comedy here, guys. Come on.
Elon's like, you remember when you guys almost caught me that one time? Inauguration day? Bet you wish they'd have bought it back then, huh?
I am the stormtrooper for the word retard, and I will clear the way for hard R-ing in public.
You just get Elon with his iRobot army, just I am the state. And it's like, damn. It's like maybe we should have listened to them.
Imagine in a police state with all the robots that come down and the robot voices, they tell you what to do, but they all have Elon Musk like weird autistic speech pattern.
Yeah.
Like you sir are under arrest right now.
It's and they even have faces to make them more palatable to people, and they have the same like weird spasms.
They're all programmed by an autist though, so they don't understand human emotion or expression.
Well, that's what you want in your robot cops. You don't want them to have sympathy for your plight. It's like,
but then don't give them faces. I don't want to see a face on a robot, man.
I just imagine.
I don't know. I always had trouble picturing me fucking a robot that didn't have a face, though.
It's because you lack the creative imagination, Logan.
It doesn't have to be a
the same person
robot.
that
It just
can't
has to have a hole.
I guess technically we've already achieved that. Then there's
exactly. Why are you giving your fuck robot legs so it can walk away from you, brother?
Bro.
Well, I'm thinking if it'll start cleaning and doing the dishes, I can kick the wife out of the house. You know.
We're still at least 12 years away from that, man. You gotta buckle down.
Ooh, just 12 years. Huh?
I don't know why. Well, I know exactly why, but this reminds me. So I was in Moab with a buddy, and we were up there to do some mountain biking, and we were riding our bikes back to the hotel, and there was one of those Renton RVs. You know what I'm talking about? The I see them a lot up here. Maybe
rent in.
Like rent and RV. Yeah, so it's like it's like 1-800-camping, and you can see the West in your own. It's one of those, right?
Did you come out here to camp and realize you don't like outside?
Yeah. And as we were pedaling back to our hotel, we passed the McDonald's, and this RV was pulling out, and there was a dude driving, but there was a guy who was standing up in the back, and in the passenger seat there was a blow-up sex doll. And we rode past it, and I turned to my buddy Dane. I was like, "Did you see?" He's like, "Yeah, I saw that." And I was like, and then we had
lucky
just,
lady.
Like, dude,
she's got two boyfriends.
Dude, nothing like going across the Wild West with your bro humping a sex doll. It's just like the great
That
American.
feels like
Adventure.
an
I love that they
amphetamine
put it in
trip
the
to me.
passenger seat.
Dude, it was in the front seat. I couldn't believe it.
Those brothers were having the time of their life. Imagine the conversation. It's like, oh, I'm just gonna leave her in the back. No. Put her up front with me. I want to hit the drive-through.
She deserves to see what's going on.
Reaching
they were
over
in
and
the-
putting
were
a
they in
hand
the
on that
drive-thru or
thigh
were
while
they
you're
just
driving.
parked?
They were coming out of the drive-through.
Oh, that's even better. That's even better. So the window had to see it.
Do you want anything, babe? No, she's good.
Oh, I bet that's why they had the dude standing in the back. He probably ordered 2 burgers. He's like, oh yeah, there's one for me and then one for her.
Just doing the like, babe, I'm driving right now.
Oh man.
This is what I voted for.
It's this is America.
Oh,
If it
Lord.
makes one liberal mad, I'm happy.
If it trolls just one liberal. Oh. I for one welcome this type of trolling. It's like I'm glad that I don't know. Seems like
Yeah.
society is lightening up a little bit because for a minute there, it seemed like we're going down this very dystopian road where it's like, oh, you're not allowed to have fun and make jokes and everybody's offended by everything. It's good to know that there's a racist generation coming up that's not gonna take this. It's like, this is America. Racism is in our blood. And to deny that is to like deny the spirit of it's like telling George Washington that no, you must submit to the taxes that the British are imposing. It's just extremely un-American.
Yeah, and I think it's probably the only way we actually get the antisocial behavior out of everyone's blood. It's like just give them slurs so they can freely say whenever they're feeling something instead of just bottling it up inside and then just doing something awful to people, you know?
Mm.
That's a good point.
Very
There's too much
weird.
thinking before we're speaking. It leads to dishonesty.
Oh, 100%. 100%. And I'd rather know who people are, even if they're just goofing, just joshing. Because, slurs tell you where someone's from more than anything else, you know? Like, there's certain slurs I'm just never going to say because I didn't grow up saying them. Like, they sound weird coming out of my mouth. But, like, retard and bitch, oh, dude, those are my words, dude. And I was thinking about this a couple days ago. I remember I used to say retarded in front of my parents all the time when I was like 10 years old, 11 years old. It was my fucking word, dude. And, it fucking fits
As
me
our
as an
entire
adult.
generation is.
Yeah,
We
absolutely.
all grew up with that word.
And it feels very weird having people tell me that like my childhood doesn't matter, like my experiences don't
Right.
matter, my culture doesn't matter, and like it's time. We grabbed our culture and we've taken it back. We grabbed it by the pussy per se, and we're letting people know who we are again. And it's really nice just be myself, my authentic self, and bring my whole self to work.
We're taking it back. Interclerks too and porch monkeys. No,
I was
it's
trying to think
okay.
of words I've adopted. What are the naughty words I've taken up that I didn't grow up saying? I can only think of one. I really like cunt, and I've picked that one up. And that one still has not been softened on America's society very much. And sometimes I drop that and get some interesting looks.
Does it feel weird coming out of your mouth, or does it feel natural?
It did at first. After about 1,000 trial runs, I've got it down pretty good now.
Yeah, I feel it. It's like wearing a new style of shoes, you know?
Mhm.
Yeah.
They
Eventually,
then they're
Yeah.
just part of you.
Some
For
nice
sure.
British loafers I put on every once in a while.
it's in the same vein. It's uncomfortable. It was very uncomfortable for me to soft A for a long time because I'd only hard R'd for the longest.
Oh, is that just how you grew up?
I was about to say that might be a product of your upbringing. Why would you want to soften it any? I don't
Oh, look, you got to be true to your roots, man.
Oh man, I hope people make it this far in the podcast.
Let's wrap it on that. I got to pee so bad.
All right,
that's
that's
fair.
that's fair. I do want to hear. Well, I guess we can talk offline. Thank you very much for listening to Against the Mob
Well, is it
podcast.
something important that people should hear?
No. I want to hear what you want to. You said you want to change the topic. I'm really curious as what it
Oh,
was.
like a long time ago?
Oh, it was like 30 minutes ago.
Bro, I forgot.
Fair
I was
enough.
hoping we made that transition already. I just assumed the next thing you said was that topic change.
Oh, okay. Fair enough. Thank you very much for listening to Against the Mob podcast. We appreciate you. You can find us here on StreamYard, connecting to YouTube until our strikes catch up to us, and it's only a matter of time.
Oh, yeah.
It's only a matter of time.
This wasn't a good episode if we're trying to
No,
say
no,
As
there's
we
definitely going to
finished
be
by glorifying every slang word we knew.
for sure. This one's definitely going to get a strike, and that's okay with me because who cares? It's our show. We can do what we want. So thank you very much for tuning in. We appreciate you. Find us wherever you listen to stuff, and we'll see you next week.